two pink lines. That's all it took to shatter everything Olivia Hart had spent 15 years building. She was Seattle's most feared CEO, cold, calculating, untouchable. Men trembled in her presence. Competitors whispered her name like a curse. But now, standing alone in her penthouse bathroom at 3 a.m., Olivia Hart was just a woman staring at a pregnancy test, her hands trembling, her empire crumbling around her. The father, Ryan Cole, the quiet, kind, single dad who worked directly under her. One reckless night, one devastating consequence, and a secret that could destroy them both. If you want to know how the most powerful woman in Seattle fell for the man she was never supposed to touch, stay with me until the very end. Hit that like button, subscribe, and comment below which city you're watching from. I want to see how far this story travels. Now let me take you back to where it all began. The rain had been falling for 3 days straight. Seattle wore its gray like a second skin in November, the kind of cold, relentless drizzle that seeped into bones and refused to let go. But inside the towering glass fortress of Summit architecture, the weather was irrelevant. Climate control kept every floor at a precise 68 degrees. Filtered air circulated silently through vents. Everything was calculated, measured, controlled. Just like Olivia Hart. She stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows of her corner office on the 42nd floor, watching the city blur beneath sheets of rain. The Space Needle was barely visible through the mist, just a ghost of a landmark, there and not there, like so many things in her life. Her reflection stared back at her in the glass. 41 years old, dark hair pulled back in a severe chignon, charcoal Armani suit that cost more than most people's monthly rent, pearl earrings, her mother's, the only sentimental thing she owned, and eyes the color of winter storms, cold enough to make grown men look away. The Ice Queen of Seattle. That's what they called her behind her back. She knew because she made it her business to know everything that happened in her building, every whisper, every rumor, every sidelong glance. Let them call her whatever they wanted. She hadn't clawed her way from nothing to care about nicknames. A soft knock interrupted her thoughts. "Ms. Hart?" Her executive assistant, Diana Chen, appeared in the doorway with a tablet pressed against her chest like armor. Diana had worked for Olivia for 7 years and still knocked like she expected to be fired at any moment. "The Meridian Group representatives are in conference room A. They're 15 minutes early." "Of course they are." Olivia didn't turn from the window. "They want to catch me off guard, make me feel rushed." "Should I tell them you'll be delayed?" "No." Olivia finally turned, and Diana instinctively took a half step back. It wasn't fear exactly. It was respect tinged with something close to awe. "I'll let them wait exactly 7 minutes, long enough to establish dominance, short enough to seem professional." "Yes, ma'am." Diana retreated, and Olivia allowed herself one more moment at the window. The Meridian deal was worth $50 million. It would be the largest contract Summit Architecture had ever landed. A complete redesign of their corporate headquarters, a sprawling campus that would redefine sustainable commercial architecture on the West Coast. She should be focused, energized, ready to devour her prey. Instead, she felt strange, a heaviness in her limbs that had nothing to do with the early hour, a faint queasiness that she'd been attributing to too much coffee and not enough sleep. She pressed a hand to her stomach without thinking, then pulled it away as if burned. "Stop it," she told herself sharply. "You're imagining things." But she wasn't imagining the missed period, or the second one, or the way certain smells had started making her gag. The Italian place on the corner that used to be her favorite lunch spot now made her rush past with her hand over her nose. Olivia Hart did not acknowledge problems she wasn't ready to solve. She filed them away, locked them in mental compartments, and dealt with them on her own timeline. This, whatever this was, would have to wait. She had a $50 million deal to close. Conference Room A was a testament to intimidation disguised as modern design. One wall was entirely glass, offering a panoramic view of the Seattle skyline that subtly reminded visitors of Summit's dominance. The opposite wall featured a massive digital screen currently displaying architectural renderings so beautiful they bordered on impossible. The table was Italian marble, cold, white, and impossibly long. Olivia entered exactly 7 minutes late and didn't apologize. Gentlemen, she said, taking her seat at the head of the table with the practiced grace of a queen ascending her throne. Thank you for making the trip from Portland. There were 4 of them, middle-aged men in suits that tried too hard, watches that screamed insecurity, and smiles that didn't reach their eyes. Olivia had dealt with 1,000 men just like them. They saw a woman in a position of power and immediately started calculating how to undermine her. She almost felt sorry for them. Almost. Miss Hart, the oldest one said, Gerald something, CEO of Meridian, the kind of man who probably had a corner office full of golf trophies. We appreciate you taking the time. I know how busy you must be. The condescension dripped from his words like honey laced with poison. How busy you must be. As if she were a secretary who'd accidentally been promoted. Olivia smiled. It didn't reach her eyes either. Let's dispense with pleasantries, shall we? She folded her hands on the cold marble. You're here because your current headquarters is an embarrassment. Your stock price dropped 12% last quarter, and your board is pressuring you to modernize your image. You've approached 3 other firms, all of whom either couldn't meet your timeline or didn't understand your vision. She paused, letting the silence stretch. I am your last option, Mr. Hendricks, and I don't like being anyone's last option. Gerald Hendricks' smile faltered. The other men exchanged uneasy glances. Now, Olivia continued, pressing a button that brought the digital wall to life with Summit's preliminary designs. Let me show you why coming to me as a last resort was the best mistake you'll ever make. For the next 45 minutes, Olivia commanded the room like a general commanding an army. She anticipated every objection before it was voiced. She countered every concern with data, projections, and the kind of confident precision that left no room for doubt. By the time she finished, Gerald Hendricks was nodding along like a man who'd just seen the light. This is impressive, he admitted, the condescension gone from his voice. More than impressive. It's revolutionary, Olivia corrected. And it will cost you exactly what I quoted in my initial proposal, not a penny less. She saw him wince. The number was aggressive, more than any of the other firms had proposed. But Olivia knew something the other firms didn't. Gerald Hendricks wasn't just looking for a building. He was looking for salvation, a legacy, something to prove he still mattered in a world that was rapidly leaving him behind. She was selling him a dream, and dreams didn't come cheap. I'll need to discuss this with my board, Gerald said, standing and extending his hand. But I think we can come to an arrangement, Ms. Hart. Olivia shook his hand firmly. I'll have the contract sent over by end of day. I look forward to building something extraordinary together. The pleasantries continued for another few minutes. Business cards exchanged, promises made, the usual dance of corporate courtesy. But Olivia was only half present. The queasiness had returned, stronger now, a rolling wave that made her grip the edge of the marble table when she thought no one was looking. She needed to get out of this room. She needed air. She needed... Ms. Hart? Diana appeared at her elbow, concern flickering across her professionally neutral expression. Are you all right? You look pale. I'm fine. The words came out sharper than intended. Have Ryan Cole come to my office in 20 minutes. We need to discuss the structural amendments to the Meridian proposal before I send the contracts. Of course. Diana hesitated. Are you sure you're... 20 minutes, Diana. Olivia didn't wait for a response. She walked out of the conference room with her head high and her pace steady, the perfect picture of control and command. She made it to her private bathroom just in time. Ryan Cole was running late. This wasn't unusual. Ryan was always running late. Not by much, usually just 5 or 10 minutes, but enough to earn him a reputation as the guy who couldn't quite get it together. His colleagues assumed it was disorganization. His supervisors assumed it was carelessness. None of them knew about Lily. Dad, I can't find my permission slip. His 8-year-old daughter's voice echoed through their small apartment, carrying the particular brand of panic that only third graders can achieve over paperwork. Kitchen table under the cereal box, Ryan called back, simultaneously tying his tie, searching for his car keys, and trying to remember if he'd packed Lily's lunch or just thought about packing it. He hadn't packed it. Found it! Lily appeared in the doorway of his bedroom, waving the crumpled form triumphantly. She was small for her age, with her mother's dark curls and her father's warm brown eyes, eyes that had seen too much loss for someone so young. But you need to sign it. Right. Pen. Where's a pen? Ryan patted his pockets, his desk, the nightstand. Lily, where do we keep pens in this house? You put them in the junk drawer after you couldn't find them last time. And where's the junk drawer? Kitchen, next to the refrigerator. Lily rolled her eyes with the weary patience of a child who had been raising her father as much as he'd been raising her. I'll get it. She disappeared, and Ryan took a moment to breathe. Just one moment. The apartment was chaos made physical. Lego bricks scattered across the living room floor like colorful landmines. Lily's latest art project, a volcano made of paper mache and glitter, drying on the kitchen counter, dishes piled in the sink because he'd fallen asleep on the couch, again after reading her bedtime stories. It wasn't supposed to be like this. 3 years ago, Ryan had been a rising architect at a prestigious Boston firm, married to the love of his life, living in a brownstone with a garden and a future that stretched out like a promise. Then Sarah got sick. 18 months later, she was gone, and Ryan was a widower at 34 with a 5-year-old who kept asking when mommy was coming home. He'd fled Boston like a man running from fire, sold the brownstone, packed everything they owned into a U-Haul, drove 3,000 miles to Seattle because it was as far as he could get from the memories without falling into the Pacific Ocean. Summit Architecture had hired him as a senior structural engineer, a step down from his Boston position, but Ryan didn't care about titles anymore. He cared about health insurance, stability, and being home in time to make dinner for his daughter. He cared about surviving. Here. Lily pressed a pen into his hand, then held out the permission slip. It's for the Science Museum field trip. Mrs. Patterson says we're going to learn about earthquakes. Earthquakes. Cool. Ryan scrawled his signature on the line, trying not to think about how much the field trip cost or how tight money was this month. Got everything else? Backpack? Homework? Lunch? Lily's expression shifted into something that was pure Sarah, a look of gentle, knowing patience. You didn't make my lunch again. I absolutely made your lunch. It's just invisible. Invisible lunch. Very nutritious. Dad? Fine. We'll stop at the grocery store on the way. You can pick something from the deli. Can I get the fancy cheese? The fancy cheese costs more than my rent. The medium fancy cheese? Deal. They made it out the door only 12 minutes behind schedule, a minor miracle by Ryan's standards. The drive to Lily's school was a blur of morning traffic and Seattle rain, the windshield wipers keeping time like a metronome, Lily humming along to the pop station she'd insisted on programming into his radio. At drop-off, she hugged him tighter than usual. Have a good day at work, Daddy. Have a good day at school, baby girl. I'm not a baby. I'm 8. You'll always be my baby. It's in the Dad Handbook. Chapter 1, page 1. She giggled, that bright, unburdened laugh that was the best sound in Ryan's world, and then she was gone, skipping through the rain toward the school entrance, her purple backpack bouncing against her shoulders. Ryan watched until she disappeared inside. He always did. Then he pulled out of the parking lot and headed toward downtown Seattle, toward the glass tower where Olivia Hart was waiting for him. He tried not to think about why that made his heart beat faster. The first time Ryan met Olivia Hart, she'd made him feel like an insect under a microscope. It was his first day at Summit, and he'd been nervous. The new guy in a building full of people who'd worked together for years, starting over in a city where he knew no one, carrying the weight of a grief that still felt like broken glass in his chest. Olivia had swept into the orientation meeting like a force of nature. She hadn't smiled. She hadn't offered pleasantries. She'd simply stood at the front of the room and assessed each new hire with those winter storm eyes, as if she could see through their resumes to the flaws and weaknesses underneath. When her gaze landed on Ryan, he'd felt something shift in his chest, a jolt, a recognition. Mr. Cole, she'd said, reading from the file in her hands. Boston College, 10 years at Hartwell and Associates. Impressive portfolio, particularly your work on the Cambridge Biotech facility. She'd looked up, pinning him with that stare. Why did you leave? It was a simple question, a standard question, the kind of thing any new employer might ask. But the way she'd asked it, direct, cutting, almost challenging, had made Ryan feel like she already knew the answer and was simply testing to see if he'd lie. Personal reasons, he'd said. The truth, if not the whole truth. Olivia had held his gaze for a long moment. Something flickered in her expression. Curiosity, maybe, or something deeper. But it was gone so quickly, Ryan wasn't sure he'd seen it at all. Personal reasons, she'd repeated. I respect that. I don't require my employees to bare their souls in staff meetings. She turned back to the group. What I do require is excellence. If you cannot deliver excellence, there is the door. Use it before I have to show you where it is. She'd left without another word, and Ryan had sat in his chair feeling like he'd just survived a hurricane. That had been 2 years ago. Since then, he'd learned to navigate the particular minefield that was working under Olivia Hart. He'd learned that she responded to competence, not charm. That she respected people who pushed back when they had data to support their positions. That beneath the Ice Queen exterior, there was a brilliant mind that saw architecture not just as buildings, but as art made functional. He'd also learned that she was lonely. Not that she'd ever said so. Not that anyone at Summit would dare suggest it. But Ryan saw things that others missed. The way she stayed in her office until 10 or 11 at night, long after everyone else had gone home. The way she never mentioned family, friends, or any life outside these glass walls. The way she sometimes stood at her window, staring out at the rain-soaked city with an expression that looked almost like longing. She was a woman who had everything and nothing at the same time. And Ryan, despite knowing better, despite the 1,000 reasons it was a terrible idea, had started to care. He arrived at Summit 20 minutes late, which meant he had exactly 0 minutes to grab coffee before heading to Olivia's office. Diana stopped him in the hallway. She's waiting for you, conference room B. Something came up with Meridian. Is she okay? The question slipped out before Ryan could stop it. Diana's eyebrows rose slightly, and he scrambled to recover. I mean, she seemed stressed yesterday. The board presentation was intense. Ms. Hart is always okay, Diana said, in a tone that suggested further inquiry was above Ryan's pay grade. Conference room B, now. Ryan nodded and headed toward his fate. He found her standing at the windows again. Always the windows. Always that view of a city she seemed to be holding at arm's length. The designs for Meridian were spread across the conference table, but she wasn't looking at them. She was looking at nothing. You're late, she said without turning. Again. I'm sorry. Traffic was... I don't want excuses. She turned finally, and Ryan felt that familiar jolt in his chest. She was beautiful, even now, maybe especially now, when she looked tired and pale and somehow more human than he'd ever seen her. I need you to review the structural specifications for the East Wing. Gerald Hendricks is concerned about seismic resilience, and I need you to assure him we've exceeded every standard by at least 15%. Of course, Ryan moved to the table, forcing himself to focus on the blueprints instead of the woman across from him. I can have the updated calculations by end of day. I need them by noon. Noon. He glanced at his watch. 3 hours. It would be tight, but doable. I'll make it work. You always do. Something in her voice made him look up. She was watching him with an expression he couldn't quite read. Something soft and strange that seemed at odds with the sharp lines of her face. Ms. Hart, Olivia. He corrected himself without thinking, then froze, realizing his mistake. He never called her Olivia. No one did. But she didn't snap at him. She didn't correct him. She just stood there, looking at him like she was seeing him for the first time. That night, she said quietly. Ryan's heart stopped. Olivia, don't. She held up a hand. Don't apologize. Don't explain. Don't pretend it didn't happen. She closed her eyes briefly, and when she opened them again, there was something vulnerable lurking beneath the ice. I just need to know. Do you regret it? The question hung in the air between them, heavy with implications neither of them was ready to face. Ryan thought about that night. 3 months ago. The company party at the Four Seasons, celebrating a project completion that had been 2 years in the making. He'd had too much champagne. She'd had too much bourbon. They'd ended up on the balcony, talking about architecture and art and loss. Real conversation, the kind he hadn't had since Sarah. And then, somehow, they'd ended up in her hotel suite. He remembered every moment of it. The way she'd looked at him when he touched her, like no one had touched her in years. The way she'd whispered his name like it was a prayer. The way she'd fallen asleep in his arms, her face soft and unguarded, and he'd watched her for hours because he couldn't bear to look away. He'd left before she woke up. It had seemed like the right thing to do, the professional thing, the kind thing. She was his boss. He was still rebuilding his life. Lily needed stability more than he needed whatever that night had been. But he hadn't regretted it, not for one single second. No, he said honestly, I don't regret it. Olivia exhaled, a small, shaky breath that seemed to release something she'd been holding for a very long time. Neither do I. She turned back to the window. Noon, Mr. Cole. Don't be late. It was a dismissal. Ryan knew he should leave. He should go back to his desk, run the calculations, bury himself in work until this conversation felt like something he'd imagined. Instead, he stayed. Olivia, if there's something going on, if you need anything, what I need, she said softly, her voice barely audible above the rain against the glass, is for you to do your job. Everything else is, she paused. Everything else is a problem for another day. She didn't look at him again. Ryan gathered the blueprints and left. But as he walked back to his office, he couldn't shake the feeling that everything was about to change. That 3 months of pretending that night hadn't happened were coming to an end. That the earthquake was just beginning. Whoa. The news came at 11:47 a.m., 13 minutes before Ryan's deadline. He was in his office, surrounded by calculations and coffee cups, running the final numbers for the seismic analysis when his phone buzzed with a message from Diana. Ms. Hart collapsed in the executive bathroom. Paramedics are here. She's conscious but refusing to go to the hospital. Come now. Ryan was on his feet before he finished reading. The elevator felt impossibly slow, each floor passing like hours instead of seconds. When the doors finally opened on 42, he could already see the commotion, people clustered in the hallway, voices low and worried, the particular tension that fills an office when something goes wrong with someone important. He pushed through the crowd without apologizing. The paramedics were in Olivia's office, 2 young men with efficient hands and gentle voices. Olivia was sitting on her leather couch, pale as paper, a blood pressure cuff around her arm, and an expression on her face that could have frozen the sun. I said I'm fine, she was saying, her voice sharp but strained. It was low blood sugar. I skipped breakfast. I don't need a hospital. Ma'am, your blood pressure is elevated, and you mentioned dizziness. I mentioned nothing. I was standing too long. It's not a medical emergency. Ryan stepped forward, drawing her attention. Something in her expression shifted when she saw him. A flash of vulnerability quickly suppressed. Everyone out, she said. Ma'am, one of the paramedics started. I said out, all of you. Diana, clear my afternoon. Cancel the 2 o'clock with Thompson and reschedule the design review. Diana nodded, already tapping on her tablet. The paramedics exchanged glances but ultimately backed off. Olivia Hart was not a woman you argued with, even when you were trying to save her life. Within 2 minutes, the office was empty, except for the 2 of them. Ryan closed the door. You should go to the hospital, he said quietly. I know. Then why? Because they'll run tests. She closed her eyes, leaning back against the couch cushions. She looked small suddenly, smaller than he'd ever seen her, like the armor she wore so fiercely had finally cracked. They'll run tests and they'll find something, and then everyone will know. Ryan felt his heart stop. Find what? Olivia, what's going on? Are you sick? Is it... I'm pregnant. The word dropped into the silence like a stone into still water. Ryan couldn't move, couldn't breathe, couldn't do anything except stand there, staring at the woman who had just upended everything he thought he knew about his life. It's yours, she continued, her voice flat, controlled, as if she were delivering a quarterly earnings report instead of the most devastating news imaginable. Don't worry, I'm not expecting anything. I know this is complicated. Your job is safe. I won't... Stop. She stopped. Ryan crossed the room in 3 steps and sat down on the couch beside her. Not touching, not quite, but close enough to feel the warmth of her, to see the tears she was fighting to contain, to understand that the Ice Queen of Seattle was terrified. How long have you known? He asked. 4 days? I took a test, then 3 more tests, then I went to a clinic across town where no one would recognize me. She laughed, a bitter, broken sound. 14 weeks. I'm 14 weeks pregnant, and I didn't even notice because I've been so focused on this goddamn company that I forgot to pay attention to my own body. 14 weeks. 3.5 months. The night at the Four Seasons had been exactly that long ago. Olivia, please don't say you're sorry. Her voice cracked. Please don't apologize or tell me it's going to be okay, or any of the meaningless things people say when they don't know what else to do. I'm 41 years old. I'm the CEO of a company that depends on my image. I'm pregnant by a man who works under me, which is a lawsuit waiting to happen, and I don't... She took a shuddering breath. I don't know what to do. Ryan had faced a lot of hard moments in his life. He'd held his wife's hand as she died. He'd explained to his 5-year-old daughter that mommy wasn't coming back. He'd buried his grief in work and distance and the determined refusal to feel anything that might destroy him. But this woman, this moment, this impossible situation required something he wasn't sure he still had. It required him to be brave. I'm not going anywhere, he said. Olivia looked at him, her winter storm eyes red-rimmed and raw. I'm not going anywhere, he repeated, more firmly this time. Whatever you decide, whatever happens, I'm here. Not because it's the right thing to do. Not because I'm scared of losing my job. Because... He paused, searching for words that felt inadequate. Because that night meant something to me. You mean something to me. And I know this is complicated, and I know we barely know each other, and I know there are 100 reasons why this is a terrible idea. But I am not going to walk away. For a long moment, Olivia just stared at him. Then slowly, she reached out and took his hand. Her fingers were cold against his, trembling slightly, but her grip was strong, the grip of a woman who had been drowning and had finally found something to hold on to. I don't know how to do this, she whispered. Neither do I, Ryan admitted. But I know a little girl who would be very excited about a baby. She's been asking for a sibling for years. She even wrote it on her Christmas list. Despite everything, a small smile flickered across Olivia's face. You're telling your daughter about this? Eventually. Only if you want... He stumbled over the words, realizing how presumptuous he was being. I'm sorry. I'm getting ahead of myself. You probably need time to think, to figure out what you want. I shouldn't be... Ryan. He stopped. Olivia squeezed his hand. Stop talking, she said softly, and just stay. For a minute. Can you do that? So he stayed. Outside the glass walls, the rain continued to fall, and the city continued its relentless rhythm, and the world continued to spin on its axis. Inside, two people sat in silence, holding hands, facing a future that neither of them had planned for. It wasn't a solution, it wasn't a promise, but it was a start. That evening, after the building had emptied and the cleaning crew had come and gone, Olivia Hart did something she hadn't done in 15 years. She went home early. Her penthouse occupied the top floor of a waterfront high-rise, all floor-to-ceiling windows and minimalist furniture and empty spaces that echoed with the silence of a life lived alone. She'd bought it 5 years ago, at the height of her success, and she decorated it with the same precision she brought to everything else, expensive, tasteful, utterly devoid of warmth. Tonight, it felt like a museum, a mausoleum. A monument to all the things she'd sacrificed to become the woman she was. She kicked off her heels by the door and walked barefoot to the window, watching the lights of Seattle flicker through the rain. Her reflection stared back at her, the same face she'd seen this morning, but different somehow, softer, more uncertain. She pressed a hand to her stomach. 14 weeks. A tiny life, growing inside her without permission, without planning, without any of the careful control she'd applied to every other aspect of her existence. Her phone buzzed. A text from Ryan. Made it home. Lily wanted to know why I was smiling, told her I had a good day at work. She said that's suspicious because I never have good days at work. Despite herself, Olivia laughed. Tell her some days are better than others. She says she doesn't believe you. She's very skeptical for an 8-year-old. Smart kid. The smartest. She gets it from her mom. Olivia hesitated, her fingers hovering over the screen. She wanted to ask about his wife, the woman he'd lost, the grief he still carried. But that felt too personal, too intimate for a text message exchange between a CEO and her employee, even if they were having a baby together. Get some sleep, she typed instead. We have a big meeting tomorrow. Yes, boss. Whatever you say, boss. 3 bags full, boss. You're mocking me. I would never. You're terrifying. Good night, Ryan. Good night, Olivia. She put the phone down and returned to the window. The rain was letting up finally, patches of darkness giving way to glimpses of stars, the first clear sky Seattle had seen in days. Olivia watched the clouds part, and she thought about the baby growing inside her, and she wondered if this was what hope felt like. She'd forgotten. It had been so long since she'd let herself feel anything beyond the cold satisfaction of success, the grim determination of survival. She'd built walls so high and so thick that nothing could get through, not joy, not pain, not the terrible vulnerability of caring about another human being. But Ryan had gotten through somehow. That night at the Four Seasons, when they'd talked for hours about art and loss and the things that made life worth living, something had cracked in her armor. When he'd touched her, when he'd looked at her like she was more than a title and a reputation and a corner office, something had broken. And now here she was, 41 years old, pregnant and terrified and more alive than she'd felt in years. Her phone buzzed again. Not Ryan this time. Diana. Board meeting moved to Friday. Henderson has questions about Meridian. Also, the Wilson account is asking for revisions. Also, your dry cleaning is ready. Also, you have 147 unread emails. Olivia sighed. The world didn't stop spinning just because your life fell apart. The deals still needed closing. The client still needed reassuring. The empire she'd built still needed its queen. She would have to figure out how to be both. Tomorrow. Tonight she was going to do something radical, something she hadn't done in years. She was going to rest. Across the city, in a small apartment filled with Lego bricks and art projects and the comfortable chaos of life with a child, Ryan Cole was doing something he hadn't done in months. He was smiling. Dad, you're being weird, Lily announced from the doorway of his bedroom, where she was supposed to be brushing her teeth. You've been smiling since you got home. Did you eat the wrong mushrooms again? That was one time, and they were clearly labeled as exotic. Mom always said you couldn't tell a poisonous mushroom from a pizza topping. The mention of Sarah hit like it always did, a sharp, sudden pain that dulled but never quite disappeared. But tonight, for the first time in a long time, the pain was accompanied by something else. A sense that maybe, just maybe, it was okay to move forward. Your mom was right about a lot of things, Ryan said, pulling Lily into a hug she pretended to resist. Now go brush your teeth. It's past bedtime. You always say that. Because it's always true. Will you read me a story? Which one? The one about the dragon who learns to make friends. Again? We've read that one 50 times. 51 times, Lily corrected. Please? Ryan sighed with the theatrical weariness of a father who had never in his life been able to say no to his daughter. Fine, but just 1 chapter. 3 chapters. 2. Deal. 20 minutes later, Lily was asleep, the book about the lonely dragon abandoned on her nightstand, her dark curls spread across the pillow like a halo. Ryan watched her for a moment, the rise and fall of her small chest, the peaceful expression on her face, the absolute trust of a child who knew she was loved. She would be excited about a baby. The thought came unbidden, and with it, a flood of others. How would he tell her? When would he tell her? What would she think about sharing her father with someone new, not just a baby, but Olivia, this complicated, brilliant, terrifying woman who had somehow become central to his life? And what about work? The whispers were already starting. He'd noticed Diana's curious glances today, the way his colleagues fell silent when he walked by. How long before someone connected the dots? How long before Olivia's carefully constructed reputation began to crumble? He needed to talk to someone he trusted, someone who would tell him the truth even when it hurt. He picked up his phone and called his sister. Hannah answered on the second ring. It's 11 o'clock. Someone better be dead or dying. I got someone pregnant. Silence. Then, what? I got someone pregnant 3 months ago. I just found out today. She's 14 weeks along. It's definitely mine. She's my boss. More silence. Then, I'm getting wine. Don't talk until I have wine. Ryan waited, listening to the distant sounds of Hannah's apartment. Footsteps, a refrigerator opening, the pop of a cork. His sister was a family therapist in Portland, which meant she was professionally obligated to remain calm in crisis situations. It also meant she had very strong opinions about making good choices, which Ryan was clearly failing to do. Okay, she said finally. I have wine. Start from the beginning. So he did. He told her about Olivia, the ice queen, the brilliant architect, the lonely woman behind the corner office. He told her about the night at the Four Seasons, the champagne and the balcony and the hotel suite where everything changed. He told her about this afternoon, the collapse, the confession, the hand-holding in the empty office while the rain fell outside. When he finished, Hannah was quiet for a long time. You love her, she said finally. Don't you? I barely know her. That's not what I asked. Ryan thought about Olivia's hands trembling in his, about her voice cracking when she said she didn't know how to do this, about the way she'd looked at him, vulnerable and scared, and how desperately he'd wanted to protect her. Maybe, he admitted, I think maybe I could. Ryan. Hannah's voice was gentle now, the therapist giving way to the sister. You know this is complicated, right? The power imbalance, the workplace dynamics, the public scrutiny when people find out, and they will find out eventually. This could blow up your career, her career, your whole life. I know. And you're okay with that? No, I'm terrified. Good. You should be. A pause. But Ryan, for what it's worth, I haven't heard you sound this alive since before Sarah died. The words hit harder than expected. Ryan felt his eyes burn, felt his throat tighten with emotions he'd been suppressing for 3 years. I miss her, he said quietly. Every day. I miss her so much it feels like dying. I know, honey, I know. But I can't stay frozen forever, can I? Lily needs a father who's actually living, not just surviving. And Olivia, she needs someone too. Someone who sees past the armor. Someone who isn't afraid of her. Are you not afraid of her? I'm terrified of her, but I think that might be part of the appeal. Hannah laughed, a warm, genuine sound that reminded Ryan of Sunday dinners and childhood summers and all the things that used to feel simple. Then I guess you have your answer, she said. Just be careful, okay? With her heart and with yours. You've both been through enough. I will. And call me. I want updates. Lots of updates. You'll be the first to know everything. Good. Now get some sleep. You sound exhausted. I am exhausted. Then sleep. Everything else can wait until morning. They said their goodbyes and Ryan put down the phone. He walked to his daughter's room and stood in the doorway, watching her sleep, thinking about the future he'd never planned for and the choices he was about to make. In 3 months, everything had changed. In 3 months, everything would change again. But right now, in this moment, Ryan Cole allowed himself to feel something he'd thought he'd lost forever. He allowed himself to hope. The rain finally stopped around midnight. Across Seattle, the clouds parted to reveal a sky full of stars, brilliant, distant, ancient lights that had witnessed 1,000 stories and would witness 1,000 more. In her penthouse, Olivia Hart stood at the window, one hand pressed against her stomach, watching the stars appear one by one. In his apartment, Ryan Cole checked on his daughter one more time, then fell asleep on the couch with a book on his chest and a smile on his face. And somewhere in the vast darkness between them, something new was beginning. Not perfect, not planned, not safe, but real. And sometimes that was enough. The next 3 weeks passed in a blur of stolen glances and careful distances. Olivia threw herself into work with a ferocity that even by her standards was excessive. She arrived at Summit before dawn and left long after dark. She micromanaged every detail of the Meridian project, demanded revisions on proposals that were already perfect, and conducted meetings with a sharp efficiency that left her staff exhausted and slightly terrified. No one commented on the changes in her, no one dared. But Diana noticed. Diana noticed the way Olivia's hand sometimes drifted to her stomach when she thought no one was watching. The way she'd stopped drinking coffee entirely, switching to herbal tea that she grimaced through with obvious distaste. The way she'd begun wearing slightly looser blazers, her usual tailored silhouettes giving way to cuts that concealed rather than emphasized. Diana had been Olivia's assistant for 7 years. She'd seen her boss through hostile takeovers and boardroom battles, and the kind of corporate warfare that left lesser executives in ruins. She knew when something was wrong, but she also knew better than to ask. So she did what she always did. She adjusted. She scheduled Olivia's appointments with extra buffer time. She kept a supply of ginger candies in her desk drawer, placing them silently on Olivia's desk without explanation. She ran interference with the more demanding board members, buying her boss time and space without ever acknowledging why. It was Diana who first noticed the whispers starting. They began in the break room on the 38th floor, spreading upward through the building like smoke through ventilation shafts. Marcus Webb from accounting mentioned to Jennifer Park from HR that he'd seen Olivia nearly faint during a client presentation. Jennifer told her assistant, who told her boyfriend in marketing, who mentioned it to his lunch group. Within a week, the entire building was buzzing with speculation. Food poisoning, some said. Stress, others suggested. A few of the bolder voices whispered about something more serious, cancer, maybe, or some other illness that would explain the CEO's increasingly erratic behavior. No one guessed the truth. No one except Diana, who had put the pieces together long before anyone else and had made a decision to protect her boss the only way she knew how, through silence. But silence, as Diana well knew, was a temporary solution at best. Sooner or later, the truth always found a way out. Ryan tried to maintain his distance. He really did. After that afternoon in Olivia's office, they'd established an unspoken agreement, professional interactions only, no lingering looks, no personal conversations, no acknowledgement of the secret that bound them together. He showed up to meetings, delivered his reports, and left without the small talk that might betray them. It was torture. Every time he saw her across the conference table, he wanted to ask how she was feeling. Every time she looked pale or tired or overwhelmed, he wanted to reach out and take her hand the way he had that day on the couch. Every time their eyes met accidentally, he felt something twist in his chest, a longing so fierce it left him breathless. But he kept his distance. For her sake. For Lily's sake. For the sake of whatever fragile future they might still have. Until the day he couldn't anymore. It happened during the Meridian Final Review, a high-stakes presentation that would determine whether Summit landed the $50 million contract. The conference room was packed, Gerald Hendricks and his entire executive team on one side of the table, Olivia and her senior staff on the other. The tension was palpable, the kind of pressure that separated the professionals from the pretenders. Olivia was magnificent, as always. She commanded the room with her usual precision, walking the Meridian executives through every detail of the proposal with the confidence of someone who knew she was offering them exactly what they needed. Her voice was steady, her gestures controlled, her arguments irrefutable. And then, halfway through her presentation on sustainable materials, she stopped. Ryan saw it happen. The slight wobble in her stance, the way her hand gripped the edge of the conference table, the color draining from her face so quickly it was like watching someone disappear. She's going to faint, he thought, and before he could stop himself, he was on his feet. If I may, he said, his voice cutting through the sudden silence, I'd like to add some technical context to what Ms. Hart was saying. Every head in the room turned toward him. Olivia's eyes met his, wide with surprise, then narrowing with something that might have been gratitude or might have been warning. Ryan didn't care which. He stepped forward, positioning himself beside her in a way that blocked the Meridian executive's view of her face, and launched into a detailed explanation of the seismic specifications he'd prepared. He talked for 3 minutes, maybe 4. Long enough for Olivia to take a few deep breaths, long enough for the color to return to her cheeks, long enough for her to recover whatever composure she'd lost. When he finished, she picked up exactly where he'd left off, smooth as glass, as if the interruption had been planned all along. "Thank you, Mr. Cole," she said, her voice betraying nothing. "As my structural engineer has so eloquently explained, our approach to seismic resilience isn't just compliant with current standards, It anticipates regulations that won't be implemented for another decade. The presentation continued. The Meridian executives asked their questions, raised their concerns, and ultimately shook hands with satisfied smiles. Gerald Hendricks signed the contract before leaving the building, $50 million, the largest deal in Summit's history. Olivia smiled for the cameras. She accepted the congratulations of her staff. She played the part of the triumphant CEO with the same flawless precision she brought to everything else. And then, when the conference room finally emptied, she closed the door and leaned against it with her eyes closed. "Thank you," she said quietly. Ryan was still gathering his papers, pretending to organize documents that were already organized. "For what?" "Don't play dumb with me." She opened her eyes, and for a moment she let him see the exhaustion beneath the mask. "You saved me back there. I was about to collapse in front of the biggest client this company has ever had. You weren't going to collapse, you were just pausing dramatically. I was about to throw up on Gerald Hendricks' Italian loafers. That would have been a power move, asserting dominance through biological warfare." Despite everything, Olivia laughed. It was a small sound, barely more than a breath, but it transformed her face in a way that made Ryan's heart clench. "How are you so calm about all of this?" she asked. "I'm not calm. I'm terrified." "You don't look terrified." "I've had practice hiding it. Single dad, remember? Lily once brought home a live frog from school and hid it in my sock drawer. I've learned to maintain composure under extreme circumstances." Olivia shook her head, but she was smiling now, really smiling, not the sharp performative expression she wore for clients and board members. This was softer, warmer, real. "You're strange," she said. "I prefer unconventional." "You're strange, and you work for me, and you're the father of my child, and I don't know what to do with any of that. We could start with dinner." The words were out before Ryan could stop them. He saw Olivia's expression shift, surprise, then uncertainty, then something that looked almost like hope. "Dinner," she repeated carefully. "Not a date. Just food. People eat food. Even CEOs and single dads. It's a biological necessity. Ryan, somewhere private. Somewhere no one from work will see us. We can talk about the project, or the weather, or the fact that I've spent the last 3 weeks trying not to stare at you across conference tables and failing miserably." Olivia was quiet for a long moment. Ryan watched her process the offer, watched the war playing out behind her eyes, the professional caution fighting against something deeper, something she'd been suppressing for years. "Friday," she said finally. "There's a restaurant in Ballard, Italian, the kind of place where they don't ask questions and they don't take pictures. Friday works. 7 o'clock, don't be late." "I'm always late." "Then be late quietly. And Ryan?" She straightened, pulling her armor back into place. "This doesn't change anything at work. We're still professional. We're still careful. We're still terrified?" "Cautious," she corrected. "We're still cautious." But she was smiling when she said it, and Ryan carried that smile with him for the rest of the day. The restaurant was called Lucia's, a tiny establishment tucked between a bookstore and a vintage clothing shop on a quiet street in Ballard. The interior was warm and dim, filled with the smell of garlic and fresh bread and the low murmur of conversations that wanted to remain private. Olivia was already there when Ryan arrived, seated in a corner booth that offered a view of the entrance and the kitchen. She was wearing jeans, actual jeans, and a cream-colored sweater that made her look softer, younger, more approachable than he'd ever seen her. She looked like someone he could fall in love with. "You're early," he said, sliding into the seat across from her. "I'm never late." "I'm aware. It's intimidating." "Most things about me are intimidating. That's rather the point." A server appeared with menus and water, and the kind of practiced discretion that suggested this place was accustomed to clients who valued their privacy. Olivia ordered a sparkling water with lemon. Ryan, after a moment's hesitation, ordered the same. "You don't have to abstain on my account," she said. "I'm the pregnant one. You're allowed to drink." "It feels rude." "It's not rude, it's practical." "Fine. Then I don't want to drink. I want to be present for this, whatever this is." Olivia studied him across the table, her expression unreadable. Ryan had seen her dissect corporate rivals with that same assessing gaze, had watched her reduce confident men to stammering wrecks with nothing more than a raised eyebrow. But tonight, there was something different in her eyes, something searching rather than challenging. "Why did you leave Boston?" she asked. The question caught him off guard. He'd been expecting small talk, preliminary negotiations, the careful circling of two people who weren't sure how much to reveal. Instead, she'd gone straight for the heart of things. "My wife died," he said simply. 3 years ago, cancer. Lily was 5. Olivia's face shifted, the mask slipping just enough to reveal genuine compassion beneath. "I'm sorry, I didn't know the details, just that you'd lost someone. Most people don't ask. They see widower on my file and they look away, like grief is contagious." He paused, surprised by how easy it was to talk to her. "Her name was Sarah. She was a pediatric nurse. We met in college, got married at 24, had Lily at 28. I thought we'd grow old together, the way you do when you're young and stupid and in love." "That's not stupid. That's human." "Maybe. But it doesn't prepare you for what happens when human plans meet inhuman reality." Ryan turned his water glass between his fingers, watching the bubbles rise. "After she died, I couldn't stay in Boston. Everything there reminded me of her. Our house, our friends, our favorite restaurants. I'd be walking down the street and suddenly smell her perfume, and I'd turn around expecting to see her, and then I'd remember." "So you ran?" "I prefer strategically relocated." "You ran," Olivia repeated, but her voice was gentle. "And that's okay. Sometimes running is the only sane response to unbearable circumstances." Ryan looked at her, really looked, and saw something he'd never expected to find in the Ice Queen of Seattle. Recognition. She understood. Not because she'd lost a spouse, he didn't think she'd ever been married, but because she knew something about unbearable circumstances, about building walls to survive, about running from pain until you ran out of places to hide. "What about you?" he asked. What unbearable circumstances shaped Olivia Hart? She was quiet for a long moment, and Ryan thought she might deflect the question, might retreat behind the professional mask she wore so effortlessly. But then she took a breath, and when she spoke, her voice was soft in a way he'd never heard. "I grew up poor," she said. "Not charming small-town poor, but ugly poor. Food stamps and eviction notices, and my mother working 3 jobs while my father drank himself to death in front of the television. I wore secondhand clothes that never fit right, and the other kids at school made sure I knew exactly what they thought of me." Ryan said nothing. He just listened. "I decided when I was 12 years old that I was going to be rich. Not comfortable, not successful, rich. Rich enough that no one could ever look down on me again. Rich enough that I'd never have to worry about where my next meal was coming from. I worked my way through college, through grad school, through entry-level positions at firms where men twice my age tried to steal credit for my work. I clawed and fought and sacrificed everything, relationships, friendships, anything that might slow me down until I got to the top. And now you're here. And now I'm here." She laughed, but it was a hollow sound. 41 years old. CEO of a company I built from nothing, penthouse apartment, more money than I could spend in 3 lifetimes, and absolutely no one to share any of it with. That sounds lonely. It is lonely. But loneliness was the price of admission. I accepted that a long time ago. She paused, her hand moving unconsciously to her stomach. At least I thought I had. The server returned with bread and olive oil, disrupting the intimacy of the moment. They ordered pasta for him, risotto for her, and made small talk about the restaurant, the neighborhood, the weather that had finally turned from rain to something resembling spring. But Ryan couldn't stop thinking about what she'd revealed, the scared little girl hiding inside the powerful woman, the loneliness she'd accepted like a terminal diagnosis, the walls she'd built so high that even she couldn't see over them anymore. "For what it's worth," he said finally, "you're not alone anymore." Olivia looked up from her bread, surprise flickering across her face. "I mean it," Ryan continued. "Whatever happens between us, whatever we decide about the baby, about work, about everything else, you're not alone. I'm here, and I'm not going anywhere." "You keep saying that." "Because it keeps being true." "How can you be so sure? You barely know me." "I know enough." He reached across the table and took her hand the same way he had that afternoon in her office. Her fingers were cold again, trembling slightly, but she didn't pull away. I know you're brilliant and driven and absolutely terrifying in meetings. I know you care about your work in a way that goes beyond profit margins and stock prices. I know you're scared right now, maybe more scared than you've ever been. But you're still here, having dinner with me, letting me see behind the armor. That's not knowing someone. That's observing them. Then let me know you. Let me in. Not all at once, I understand that's not how you operate, but bit by bit, one dinner at a time. Olivia stared at him for a long moment, and Ryan could see the conflict playing out behind her eyes. The fear of vulnerability warring with the desperate human need for connection. The woman who had built an empire on control struggling against the woman who was tired of being alone. One dinner at a time, she repeated slowly. That's all I'm asking. And what if it doesn't work? What if we're too different, or the pressure becomes too much, or we end up hating each other by the time this baby is born? Then we'll figure it out, together, like adults. I'm not sure I know how to do that. Neither am I. But I've heard it gets easier with practice. Despite everything, the fear, the uncertainty, the 1,000 complications waiting for them outside this restaurant, Olivia smiled. It was a real smile, the kind that reached her eyes and softened the hard lines of her face. You're an optimist, she said. I didn't expect that. I'm a realist who's learned that pessimism is exhausting. Life is already hard enough without expecting the worst. That's a surprisingly healthy attitude for someone who's been through what you've been through. Sarah used to say the same thing. She called it my stubborn refusal to accept defeat. The memory brought a pang of grief, but it was gentler now, a dull ache rather than a sharp stab. She'd be happy, I think, that I'm sitting here with you, that I'm trying again. Trying again? At life, at connection, at letting someone matter. Olivia's eyes glistened, and for a moment Ryan thought she might cry. But she blinked hard, took a sip of her water, and composed herself with the efficiency of someone who'd had decades of practice suppressing emotion. This baby matters, she said quietly. I didn't expect it to. When I first found out, I was too shocked to feel anything beyond panic. But it does. It matters to me in a way I can't explain. Then we'll make sure it knows that, both of us. Together. The food arrived, rich and aromatic and utterly secondary to the conversation they were having. They ate slowly, talking about everything and nothing. Olivia's favorite architects, Ryan's daughter's obsession with dinosaurs, the buildings they loved, and the designs they despised. It felt easy in a way that surprised them both, like discovering a language they hadn't known they shared. By the time they finished, the restaurant had emptied and the staff was politely cleaning around them. Ryan paid the check over Olivia's protests, and they walked out into a night that had turned unexpectedly clear. Stars were visible above the city lights, faint, but there. I had a good time, Olivia said, sounding almost surprised by the admission. Me too. We should do this again. Name the day. She turned to face him, her expression serious. Ryan, I need you to understand something. What we're doing, whatever this is, it's dangerous. Not just for our careers, but for everything. If the board finds out, if the press gets involved, if anyone decides to make an example of us. I know. Do you? Because I've seen what happens to people who let their personal lives interfere with their professional ones. I've seen careers destroyed over less than this. I know, he repeated. And I'm still here. Why? The question hung in the air between them, heavy with implications. Ryan thought about all the sensible answers he could give, responsibility, duty, the child they were bringing into the world, but none of those captured the truth. Because of you, he said simply. Because when I look at you, I don't see the Ice Queen everyone talks about. I see a woman who's been fighting alone for too long. And I don't want you to have to fight alone anymore. Olivia's composure cracked. Just for a moment, a flicker of raw emotion breaking through the carefully constructed mask. She looked away, blinking hard, and when she looked back, her eyes were bright with unshed tears. No one's ever said anything like that to me before. Then everyone you've known has been blind. She laughed, a wet, uncertain sound, and reached up to touch his face. Her fingers were still cold, but her palm was warm against his cheek. "One dinner at a time," she whispered. "One dinner at a time." And standing there on a quiet street in Ballard, with stars emerging from behind clouds and the city humming softly around them, something shifted between them. Not love, not yet, but the possibility of it. The fragile, terrifying, exhilarating possibility of something neither of them had planned for. It was a beginning. The following Monday, everything changed. Olivia knew something was wrong the moment she stepped off the elevator. The usual morning bustle of Summit's executive floor had gone quiet. Too quiet. The kind of silence that falls when people have been talking about you and don't want to get caught. Diana met her outside her office, tablet clutched against her chest like a shield. "What happened?" Olivia asked, keeping her voice low. "There's a rumor about you and Mr. Cole." The words hit like a physical blow, but Olivia didn't let it show. Years of practice had taught her to absorb bad news without flinching, to process shock while maintaining the appearance of control. "What kind of rumor?" "The romantic kind. Someone saw you leaving Lucia's together on Friday. They told someone else, who told someone else, and now—" Diana trailed off, her expression apologetic. "It's spreading." "How far?" HR has been asking questions, quietly, but asking. Olivia closed her eyes briefly. She'd known this was coming, had prepared for it even, but the timing couldn't have been worse. The Meridian contract was signed but not yet implemented. The board was already nervous about her management style. One wrong move, one hint of scandal, and everything she'd built could come crashing down. "Where's Ryan?" "In his office. I don't think he knows yet." "Keep it that way. I'll handle this." She strode into her office and closed the door, giving herself exactly 30 seconds to panic before the calm reasserted itself. She'd faced worse than this. She'd survived hostile takeovers and SEC investigations and competitors who'd tried to destroy her through leaks and lies. A rumor about a romantic relationship was nothing, a distraction, easily managed. Except it wasn't just a rumor. It was the truth. And the truth had a way of growing beyond control. She called Marcus Webb first, the head of HR, a man who owed his position to Olivia's intervention 3 years ago when his predecessor had tried to force him out. He answered on the second ring. "Ms. Hart, I was just about to call you." "I'm sure you were. What are people saying?" "That you're involved with Ryan Cole, that someone saw you having dinner together on Friday night, that it might be, more than professional." "And what are you going to do about it?" A pause. "That depends on whether it's true." Olivia considered lying. It would be easy enough. Deny everything, make Ryan deny everything, let the rumor die from lack of confirmation. They were both private people. There was no evidence beyond a single sighting at a restaurant. But lying meant hiding, and hiding meant shame, and Olivia Hart had spent 41 years refusing to be ashamed of who she was. "It's complicated," she said finally, "but I'm not going to discuss my personal life with HR or anyone else. What I will tell you is that my relationship with Mr. Cole, whatever it may be, has not and will not affect my ability to lead this company. Any suggestion to the contrary is speculation at best and defamation at worst. The board will have questions. The board always has questions. I'll address them when and if they become relevant." "Olivia," Marcus's voice softened, shifting from professional to personal. "I'm not trying to make this difficult, but there are policies. If you and Ryan are involved, it creates complications. Power dynamics, potential liability, the appearance of impropriety. I'm aware of the complications. I'm dealing with them." "How?" She thought about the baby growing inside her, about Ryan's warm hands and steady voice, about the dinner in Ballard and the possibility of something neither of them had expected. "The only way I know how," she said. "Head on." She hung up before he could respond. The next call was harder. Ryan answered his phone, sounding distracted, the clatter of keyboards audible in the background. "Hey, what's up?" "We need to talk, in person, now." A pause. That doesn't sound good. "It's not good. It's not terrible either, but we need to talk." "Your office?" "Too visible. Meet me on the roof. 5 minutes." The roof of Summit architecture was technically off limits, a maintenance area accessible only through a service door that Olivia had long ago commandeered for moments when she needed to escape. The wind was stronger up here, the city spread out below like a circuit board, the Space Needle rising in the distance like a needle trying to puncture the clouds. Ryan arrived looking worried, his tie slightly askew, his hair rumpled in a way that suggested he'd been running his hands through it. "What happened?" Olivia told him. She watched his face as she spoke, watched the color drain and then return as he processed the implications. "So they know about dinner," he said slowly. "But not yet. But it's only a matter of time. Rumors have a way of expanding, especially in an office like this." She wrapped her arms around herself against the wind. "We need to decide what to do. What are our options? We could deny everything. Say it was a professional dinner, nothing more. Let the rumor die. But that only works if we actually stop seeing each other. If we maintain complete professional distance from now until—" She hesitated. "Until the baby starts showing. And then the questions start all over again." Ryan was quiet for a moment, staring out at the city below. When he spoke, his voice was thoughtful. "What's the worst-case scenario, if we tell the truth? HR investigation, board review, possible termination for you. I can protect your job to some extent, but not if the board decides to make an example. My reputation takes a hit. The company's stock might dip. Clients might get nervous. And the best case? Best case?" Olivia laughed, but it was a brittle sound. "Best case is that people gossip for a few weeks and then move on to the next scandal. That the board decides it's not worth the trouble of replacing their most successful CEO. That we weather the storm and come out the other side intact. What's realistic? Somewhere in between, messy, complicated, painful, but survivable." Ryan turned to face her, and his expression was unexpectedly calm, determined even. "Then let's survive it together." "Ryan, I mean it. I'm tired of hiding. I'm tired of pretending that dinner on Friday didn't matter, that those moments in your office didn't change something, that I don't spend half my workday trying not to think about you." He stepped closer, close enough that she could feel the warmth of him even through the wind. "I know this is risky. I know it might blow up in our faces. But I'd rather face that than spend the next 6 months lying about something that actually makes me happy." Olivia stared at him, her heart hammering against her ribs. "You barely know me." "I know enough. I know you're scared. I know you're trying to control everything because control is how you survive. I know you think you don't deserve this, that happiness is for other people, that you traded your shot at a normal life for success, and now you're stuck with the bargain you made." Her breath caught. "That's not... But here's the thing." He reached out and took her hands, warming them between his own. "You're not stuck. You're not alone. And whatever happens with the board or HR or any of the people downstairs who think they know what's going on, you've got me, for however long you want me." The tears came before Olivia could stop them. She'd spent decades perfecting the art of not crying, not in boardrooms, not in negotiations, not in the privacy of her own apartment when the loneliness became too much to bear, but standing here on the roof of her own building, holding hands with a man who'd somehow seen through every wall she'd built. She couldn't hold them back. "I don't know how to do this," she whispered. "Neither do I. But we'll figure it out." "What if we can't? What if it's too hard?" "Then we'll fail together, and then we'll try again." She laughed through her tears, a real laugh, messy and uncontrolled. "You're impossibly optimistic. I'm impossibly stubborn. There's a difference. Is there?" "Not really, but it sounds better." He pulled her into his arms, and she let him. For the first time in longer than she could remember, Olivia Hart let someone hold her while she cried. The wind whipped around them, and the city hummed below, and somewhere in the offices beneath their feet, rumors were spreading like wildfire. But up here, in this moment, none of that mattered. They had each other. And for now, that was enough. The board meeting was scheduled for Thursday. Olivia spent the next 3 days preparing. She reviewed financial statements, rehearsed talking points, anticipated every possible objection. She spoke privately with the board members she trusted most, gauging their reactions, testing the waters. The responses were mixed. Charles Henderson, the longest-serving member and the closest thing Olivia had to an ally, expressed cautious support. The optics aren't great, he admitted during their private lunch. But you've delivered results. The Meridian contract alone should buy you some goodwill. Margaret Wu, the newest member and the most progressive, was more enthusiastic. Honestly, I think it's about time this company entered the 21st century. Employees have personal lives. CEOs are human. As long as the relationship is consensual and doesn't interfere with work, I don't see the problem. But Robert Hayes, the chairman, the most conservative voice on the board, the man who'd opposed Olivia's appointment from the beginning, was a different story entirely. This is exactly the kind of behavior I warned about, he said, when Olivia reached him by phone. A female CEO, young, unmarried. I said there would be complications. I said she couldn't maintain the necessary objectivity. With all due respect, Robert, my gender has nothing to do with it has everything to do with it. The company's image, our investors' confidence, the trust our clients place in our leadership, all of it depends on the perception of stability. And this? He laughed, a cold, dismissive sound. This is not stability. The Meridian contract says otherwise. One contract doesn't negate a scandal. And make no mistake, if this becomes public, it will be a scandal. The press loves nothing more than a powerful woman brought low by personal indiscretion. Olivia gripped the phone so hard her knuckles went white. I haven't been brought low. I'm handling a personal situation with professionalism and discretion. You're handling it by dating your subordinate while pregnant with his child. Don't think I haven't heard that particular rumor. Ice shot through Olivia's veins. Where did you... It doesn't matter where I heard it. What matters is that I heard it at all. If I know, others know. And once the board convenes, there's no predicting how they'll react. He hung up without saying goodbye. Olivia sat in her office for a long time after that call, staring at the rain that had returned to streak her windows. She'd known Robert Hayes was a problem, had been fighting his subtle opposition since her first day as CEO. But she'd always managed to outmaneuver him before, to let her results speak louder than his objections. This was different. This was personal. And personal in Olivia's world was always a weapon. She called Ryan that evening after Lily was in bed and the apartment had gone quiet. Hayes knows about the baby, she said without preamble. Someone talked, and now he's using it against me. Ryan was silent for a moment, processing. How bad is it? Bad enough. He's going to push for my resignation at Thursday's meeting, or at least for some kind of disciplinary action. Can he do that? The board has the power to remove me if they vote unanimously. But he won't get unanimity. Henderson and Wu will support me, and a few others are still undecided. The question is whether he can sway enough votes to make my position untenable. What can I do? It was such a simple question, asked with such genuine concern that Olivia felt her eyes sting. You can be ready, she said. If they decide to terminate you, I don't care about my job. Ryan, I mean it. I took this position because I needed stability for Lily, and I found something I didn't expect. But stability isn't worth anything if it comes at the cost of everything that matters. His voice softened. You matter, Olivia, more than a salary, more than a title. If they fire me, we'll figure something out. That's not how the world works. Maybe not, but it's how I work. And right now I'm more worried about you than about myself. Olivia leaned back in her chair, closing her eyes against the tears that threatened to fall. No one's ever worried about me before. Everyone assumes I can handle anything, that nothing gets to me. That's because you're very good at pretending. I've had practice. You don't have to pretend with me. The words hung in the air between them, heavy with meaning. Olivia thought about all the years she'd spent performing strength, projecting invincibility, never letting anyone see the frightened girl who still lived inside her. And here was this man, this quiet, kind, impossibly stubborn man, offering her the one thing she'd never let herself want, permission to be human. I'm scared, she admitted, the words barely a whisper. I know. I've never been scared like this before. Not even when I was building the company from nothing, not even when every investor told me I'd fail, not even when I thought I'd lose everything I'd worked for. This is different. This is personal. Yes. And I don't know how to handle personal. I've spent my whole life making sure nothing was personal, because personal means vulnerable. And vulnerable means being human. She laughed through her tears. You keep saying that because it keeps being true. I hate it when you're right. Get used to it. I plan to be right a lot. Despite everything, the fear, the uncertainty, the battle waiting for her on Thursday. Olivia smiled. Stay on the phone with me, she said. Just for a while. As long as you need. And so they talked. About nothing and everything. About architecture and parenthood and the 1,000 small moments that make up a life. They talked until Olivia's voice grew heavy with exhaustion and Ryan's words started slurring with sleep. They talked until the rain stopped and the stars came out and the city below them finally went quiet. And somewhere in the darkness, despite everything, hope refused to die. Thursday arrived with the cold precision of a blade. Olivia dressed carefully that morning, her most powerful suit, her mother's pearls, heels that added 3 inches to her already considerable presence. She looked at herself in the mirror and saw what the board would see. The Ice Queen, unmoved and unmoving, ready for battle. She didn't feel like a queen. She felt like a woman fighting for her life. The boardroom was full when she arrived, 12 faces arranged around the long table, some sympathetic, some hostile, most carefully neutral. Robert Hayes sat at the far end, his expression smug with anticipation. Olivia took her seat at the head of the table and smiled. Ladies and gentlemen, she said, her voice steady as stone. I understand we have concerns to address. Let's begin. The silence in the boardroom was suffocating. 12 faces stared at Olivia, and she stared back, refusing to flinch. She had spent 20 years learning to read rooms like this, to sense the shifting currents of power and allegiance that ran beneath the surface of corporate politeness. Right now, those currents were treacherous. Robert Hayes cleared his throat with theatrical deliberation. I believe we all know why we're here. Do we? Olivia kept her voice mild, almost bored. Because the agenda I received mentioned quarterly projections and the Meridian implementation timeline. Perhaps there's been some confusion. Let's not play games, Miss Hart. Hayes leaned forward, his silver hair catching the light from the floor-to-ceiling windows. There are serious concerns about your conduct, concerns that go beyond quarterly reports. Then perhaps someone should articulate those concerns clearly. We're all busy people. Charles Henderson shifted uncomfortably in his seat. Margaret Wu caught Olivia's eye and gave an almost imperceptible nod of support, but the others remained carefully neutral, their expressions revealing nothing. Hayes smiled the smile of a man who believed he had already won. Very well. It has come to the board's attention that you are engaged in a romantic relationship with one of your subordinates, a Mr. Ryan Cole, if I'm not mistaken, senior structural engineer. And? The single word hung in the air like a challenge. Hayes' smile flickered. And such relationships are a violation of company policy. They create liability, compromise professional judgment, and expose Summit architecture to potential lawsuits. I'm aware of company policy. I wrote most of it. Olivia folded her hands on the table, a gesture of calm she didn't feel. The policy you're referring to requires disclosure of romantic relationships between supervisors and subordinates, along with appropriate measures to prevent conflicts of interest. It does not prohibit such relationships entirely. Disclosure being the key word. Hayes pulled a folder from his briefcase with the flourish of a magician revealing his final trick. You failed to disclose, for months apparently, and there are additional rumors, unconfirmed but troubling, that the relationship has resulted in a pregnancy. The word landed like a bomb. Around the table, faces shifted. Some showed shock. Others showed the grim satisfaction of suspicions confirmed. Margaret Wu's expression tightened with concern. Charles Henderson closed his eyes briefly. Olivia didn't move, didn't breathe, didn't let a single flicker of emotion cross her face. Unconfirmed rumors, she repeated slowly. Is that what we're basing board decisions on now? Gossip and speculation? Are you denying it? The question was a trap, and they both knew it. If she denied the pregnancy and it later became public, she would be caught in a lie that would destroy her credibility forever. If she confirmed it, she handed Hayes exactly the ammunition he needed. So she chose a third option. What I'm denying, she said, her voice cutting like glass, is the relevance of my personal medical information to this board. What I'm denying is the implication that my private life has any bearing on my ability to lead this company. And what I'm absolutely categorically denying is the notion that Robert Hayes, a man who has opposed my leadership since day one, who voted against every major initiative I've proposed, who has spent 3 years waiting for an opportunity to force me out, has any right to interrogate me about matters that are none of his business. The room went silent. Hayes's face flushed red. Now see here. No, you see here. Olivia stood, using her full height to command the room. In the 18 months since I became CEO, this company's revenue has increased by 43%. We've landed the 3 largest contracts in Summit's history. Our employee satisfaction ratings are at an all-time high. Our reputation in the industry has never been stronger. She paused, letting the numbers sink in. And now, because of unsubstantiated rumors about my personal life, you want to question my fitness to lead? You want to drag my private business into a boardroom and treat it like a matter of corporate governance? There are legitimate concerns, Hayes began. There are political motivations, Olivia cut him off, dressed up as legitimate concerns, and everyone in this room knows it. She looked around the table, meeting each pair of eyes in turn. Some looked away. Others held her gaze with varying degrees of sympathy or hostility. Here's what I'm prepared to offer, she continued, her voice softening just slightly. I will formally disclose my relationship with Ryan Cole as required by company policy. I will work with HR to implement appropriate safeguards to prevent any conflicts of interest. And I will continue to do the job you hired me to do, growing this company, landing contracts, and building something we can all be proud of. And the pregnancy, Hayes pressed, is my business. Not yours. Not the board's. Mine. She paused. However, I will tell you this. Whatever personal circumstances I may be dealing with, they have not and will not affect my commitment to Summit architecture. I have spent 20 years building my career. I have no intention of letting anything or anyone derail it now. The room remained silent for a long moment. Then Charles Henderson spoke, his voice measured and calm. I move that we accept Ms. Hart's proposal, formal disclosure, appropriate safeguards, and continued leadership. All in favor? Hands went up around the table. Olivia counted quickly. 7 in favor, 4 against, 1 abstention. Hayes's face twisted with barely contained fury. This isn't over, he said quietly. Nothing ever is. Olivia gathered her materials with deliberate calm. But for now, I believe we have a company to run. Unless there's other business. No one spoke. Then this meeting is adjourned. She walked out of the boardroom without looking back, her heels clicking against the marble floor like a victory march. She made it to her office, closed the door, sat down in her chair, and then, finally, she let herself shake. Ryan was waiting for her when she emerged an hour later. He was standing by the elevators, trying to look casual and failing miserably. When he saw her face, pale but composed, exhausted but intact, something in his expression shifted from worry to relief. Well? He asked quietly. I survived. That's not a lot of information. It's all you're getting in a public hallway. She pressed the elevator button. Meet me at my apartment tonight, 8 o'clock. I'll tell you everything. Are you okay? The question was so simple, so genuine, that it nearly broke her all over again. I will be, tonight. 8 o'clock. The elevator doors opened, and she stepped inside without looking back. But as the doors closed, she allowed herself one small moment of weakness. She pressed her hand against her stomach and whispered, We made it. We're okay. The baby didn't respond, of course. But somehow, Olivia felt better anyway. Across the city, in the small apartment he shared with his daughter, Ryan was trying very hard to act normal. Dad, you're being weird again. Lily looked up from her homework with the penetrating gaze of a child who missed nothing. You keep checking your phone, like, I'm not checking my phone. You've checked it 4 times in the last 10 minutes. You're counting? Mrs. Patterson says observation is the foundation of scientific inquiry. Ryan sighed and put the phone face down on the kitchen table. Fine. I'm waiting for a message from someone. From who? Whom? From whom? A friend. What friend? You don't have friends. You just have me and Aunt Hannah. I have friends. Name one, besides Aunt Hannah. Ryan opened his mouth, then closed it again. His daughter had a point. Since moving to Seattle, he'd kept to himself, focused entirely on work and Lily, avoiding the kind of social connections that might require him to open up about his past. Until Olivia. Her name is Olivia, he said finally. She's someone I work with. Is she your girlfriend? The question hit like a punch to the chest. Ryan had been so focused on managing the immediate crisis that he hadn't thought about how to explain any of this to his daughter. How did you tell an 8-year-old that her father was having a baby with his boss? That their carefully constructed life was about to change in ways neither of them could predict? It's complicated, he said. That's what you always say when you don't want to answer. Because sometimes things are actually complicated. Lily set down her pencil with the patient exasperation of someone who had been dealing with adult evasiveness for far too long. Dad, I'm not a baby. I know things are complicated. My mom died. That was complicated. Moving to Seattle was complicated. You being sad all the time was complicated. She paused. But you're not sad anymore. You smile now. You hum in the shower. You made pancakes this morning without burning them. The pancakes were a minor miracle. My point is, something's different, and I want to know what. Ryan looked at his daughter, this small, fierce, impossibly perceptive person who had somehow survived the worst thing that could happen to a child and emerged stronger for it. She deserved the truth, or at least as much of the truth as he could give her. Olivia is special, he said carefully. We've been spending time together, getting to know each other, and there are some things happening that are going to change our lives. What kind of things? He took a deep breath. There's going to be a baby. Lily's eyes went wide. A baby? Like a real baby? As opposed to a fake baby? Dad, be serious. Sorry. Yes, a real baby. Olivia is pregnant. For a long moment, Lily just stared at him, processing. Ryan could practically see the gears turning in her head, working through the implications, the questions, the 1,000 small adjustments this news required. Then her face broke into a smile so bright it lit up the entire room. I'm going to be a big sister? Yes, technically. Dad! She launched herself across the table and into his arms, nearly knocking over her glass of milk in the process. This is the best news ever. I've always wanted a sibling. I wrote it on my Christmas list every year. Even when Mom was sick, I wished for a brother or sister because I thought maybe it would make you less sad. Ryan held her tight, feeling tears prick at his eyes. Lil, honey, there's a lot we still need to figure out. Olivia and I, we're not married. We're not even officially together. There are going to be challenges and changes, but there's going to be a baby. She pulled back, her face serious now. A baby that's part you and part Olivia. And that means they'll be my family, right? Right. Then the rest doesn't matter. We'll figure it out. That's what we do. Ryan stared at his daughter, overwhelmed by the simple, profound wisdom of a child who had learned too young that life didn't follow plans, but that didn't mean it couldn't be beautiful anyway. When did you get so smart? He asked. I've always been smart. You're just slow to notice. He laughed, a real laugh, the kind that came from somewhere deep, and pulled her close again. I love you, Lil. I love you too, Dad. She squirmed in his arms. Now can we call Olivia? I want to meet her. I have a lot of questions about the baby. Tonight. I'm seeing her tonight. Can I come? Not this time, but soon. I promise. Lily nodded, accepting this with the grace of a child who had learned to be patient. Tell her I'm excited. Tell her I'm going to be the best big sister ever. I will. And tell her not to worry. Our family's a little weird, but we're pretty good at taking care of people. Ryan smiled, his heart full to bursting with love for this resilient, remarkable girl. I'll tell her. Olivia's apartment was quiet when Ryan arrived at 8. She answered the door still wearing her work clothes, but her hair had come loose from its usual severe chignon, falling around her shoulders in dark waves. She looked exhausted, vulnerable, and somehow more beautiful than he'd ever seen her. You survived, he said. Barely. She stepped aside to let him in. The board voted to accept my proposal. Formal disclosure, appropriate safeguards, Business as usual. That's good news. It's a temporary reprieve. She led him into the living room where 2 glasses of sparkling water sat waiting on the coffee table. Hayes is furious. He'll find another angle, another attack. This isn't over. Then we'll face it when it comes. Ryan sat down on the couch, pulling her gently down beside him. Right now, I just need to know how you're feeling. Tired, scared, relieved. She leaned into him, letting her head rest against his shoulder. I stood in front of 12 people today and fought for my career, my reputation, my right to have a personal life. And the whole time, all I could think about was this baby. Whether the stress was hurting it, whether I was making the right choices, whether any of this was worth the risk. And what did you decide? She was quiet for a moment, her hand drifting to her stomach in that unconscious gesture that had become so familiar. I decided that some things are worth fighting for, even when the fight is hard, even when the outcome is uncertain. She looked up at him, her eyes bright with unshed tears. You're worth fighting for, Ryan. This baby is worth fighting for, and I'm done pretending otherwise. Ryan felt his heart crack open, not with pain, but with something deeper, something that felt like coming home. I told Lily, he said softly. Olivia stiffened. You did? She noticed I was happy. She demanded an explanation. She's very persistent when she wants information. He smiled. She's thrilled, by the way. She's been asking for a sibling since she was 4. She says this is the best news ever. She hasn't even met me. She will, when you're ready. What if she doesn't like me? The vulnerability in the question broke Ryan's heart. Here was this powerful, formidable woman, the ice queen of Seattle, the terror of corporate boardrooms, worried about whether an 8-year-old would approve of her. She's going to love you, he said firmly, because you're smart and strong and you make her dad smile. And because she already decided that anyone who's bringing a baby into our family is automatically part of that family. Olivia's eyes spilled over. She wiped at her cheeks impatiently, as if the tears were a weakness she couldn't afford. I don't know how to be part of a family. I never had one. Not a real one. Then let us show you. Lily and me. We're not perfect, far from it, but we're pretty good at loving people. He took her face in his hands, wiping away the tears with his thumbs. Let us love you, Olivia. That's all I'm asking. She stared at him for a long moment, and he could see the war raging behind her eyes. The fear of vulnerability fighting against the desperate need for connection. The walls she'd spent a lifetime building straining against the force of something stronger. And then, slowly, she nodded. Okay, she whispered. Okay? Okay, I'll try. I don't know how, and I'll probably mess it up, and I'm going to be terrible at this for a while. But I'll try. Ryan pulled her close and kissed her, really kissed her, for the first time since that night at the Four Seasons. It was different now, deeper, charged with all the promises they'd made and all the fears they'd shared. When they finally broke apart, both of them were breathing hard. I'm falling for you, he said, in case that wasn't clear. It was becoming obvious. She smiled, a real smile, the kind that transformed her entire face. I'm falling for you too. It's terrifying. Everything worth doing is terrifying. Who told you that? My 8-year-old daughter. She's very wise. Olivia laughed, and the sound was like music, bright and unexpected and full of hope. I want to meet her, she said. Lily, I want to meet her. Tomorrow? That soon? Why wait? We've already wasted 3 months pretending this wasn't happening. He grinned. Besides, Lily specifically requested that I tell you she's going to be the best big sister ever. I think she's already planning the nursery. She doesn't even know if I want a nursery. She's 8. She assumes everyone wants a nursery. Olivia shook her head, but she was still smiling. Tomorrow. I'll come to your apartment. I'll bring... What do 8-year-olds like? Wine? No, not wine. Cake? Lily would love cake. Then I'll bring cake, and I'll meet your daughter, and I'll try not to completely fall apart in the process. You won't fall apart. How do you know? Because you're the strongest person I've ever met. He kissed her forehead softly. And because you won't be doing it alone. They sat together in the quiet of her apartment as the night deepened around them. They talked about the baby, about the future, about the 1,000 small details that would need to be worked out. They didn't solve everything, couldn't solve everything, but they made a start. And sometimes that was enough. The meeting with Lily was scheduled for Saturday afternoon. Olivia spent the entire morning in a state of barely controlled panic. She changed outfits 4 times, finally settling on jeans and a simple blue sweater that she hoped conveyed approachability. She bought a chocolate cake from the bakery Lily apparently loved, then worried it was too much, then worried it wasn't enough. By the time she pulled up outside Ryan's apartment building, her hands were shaking so badly she could barely grip the steering wheel. "Get it together," she told herself. "You've faced hostile boards and aggressive competitors and investors who wanted to destroy you. You can handle one 8-year-old, but this was different. This mattered in a way that business never had." Ryan met her at the door, his smile warm and reassuring. "You look terrified." "I am terrified." "She's gonna love you." "You keep saying that." "Because it keeps being true." He took the cake from her hands and leaned in to kiss her cheek. "Come on." She's been waiting by the window for an hour. The apartment was exactly as Olivia had imagined, small and cluttered and impossibly warm. Lego creations covered every available surface. Art projects hung from the walls. The coffee table was buried under coloring books and crayons and what appeared to be the beginnings of a papier-mâché solar system. And there, standing in the middle of it all, was Lily. She was smaller than Olivia expected, with dark curls and bright brown eyes and an expression of intense concentration that reminded Olivia suddenly, sharply, of her own face in childhood photographs. The face of a child who was sizing up a new situation, calculating risks and rewards. "You're Olivia," Lily said. It wasn't a question. "I am." "You're the one who's having a baby with my dad." "Yes." "And you're his boss." "Also yes." Lily nodded slowly, processing this information. Then she walked forward, stopping just a few feet away from where Olivia stood, frozen by the door. "I have some questions." "Okay." First question, do you like dinosaurs? Of all the things Olivia had prepared for, questions about her relationship with Ryan, about her intentions, about her ability to be a good mother, this was not one of them. What? Dinosaurs. Do you like them?" Olivia glanced at Ryan, who was watching with barely suppressed amusement. No help there. "I suppose I haven't thought much about dinosaurs since I was a child," she said carefully, "but I remember being interested in them." "Did you have a favorite?" "I think the Stegosaurus. I like the plates on its back." Lily's face brightened. "That's a good choice." Stegosaurus had a brain the size of a walnut, but its tail spikes were called a thagomizer, and they could seriously injure predators. Some people think Stegosaurus is boring, but those people are wrong. "I see." Second question, can you cook? "Not very well. I usually order takeout." "That's okay. Dad can't cook either. He burns everything except pancakes, and even those are questionable." "Hey," Ryan protested from the kitchen, where he was cutting the cake. "It's true, and you know it." Lily turned back to Olivia, her expression serious. Third question. "Are you going to make my dad sad?" The question hit Olivia like a physical blow. She saw the fear beneath the words, the fear of a child who had already lost one parent and couldn't bear to see the other hurt. The fear of opening up to someone new, only to be disappointed again. She knelt down until she was at Lily's eye level. "I'm going to try very hard not to," she said honestly. "I care about your dad a lot, and I know I'm not easy. I work too much, and I don't know how to relax, and I've never been part of a family before. But I promise you, Lily, I will never hurt him on purpose. And if I mess up, which I probably will, I'll do everything I can to fix it." Lily studied her face for a long moment, those sharp brown eyes searching for any sign of deception. Then she smiled, a bright, sudden smile that transformed her entire face. "Okay," she said. "You can stay." Thank you?" "You're welcome." Lily reached out and took Olivia's hand, her small fingers warm and confident. "Come on, I'll show you my dinosaur collection. I have 47 of them. The Velociraptor is my favorite, but I also like the T-Rex because she's named Victoria after a queen who was also scary." She tugged Olivia toward her bedroom. chattering happily about the various merits of different prehistoric creatures. Olivia let herself be led, feeling something crack open in her chest, something that had been sealed shut for so long she'd forgotten it was there. Hope, she realized. This was what hope felt like. Ryan watched them go, his heart so full he could barely breathe. The next few weeks were a delicate balance of hope and fear. Olivia and Ryan settled into a rhythm, dinners together when they could manage it, texts throughout the day, the slow building of something that felt more and more like a real relationship. Lily adopted Olivia with the fierce loyalty of a child who had decided she belonged to them, showering her with dinosaur facts and demanding her presence at Saturday pancake breakfasts. At work, they maintained their professional distance. Olivia filed the formal disclosure with HR, endured the awkward meeting with Marcus Webb where she outlined the safeguards they would implement, and went back to running her company as if nothing had changed. But everything had changed. The pregnancy was progressing, and with it came changes that were increasingly hard to hide. Olivia's suits no longer fit the way they used to. Her energy flagged in the late afternoons, forcing her to schedule important meetings for mornings. The nausea had mostly passed, replaced by a constant hunger that had Diana stocking her office with snacks. And the rumors continued to swirl. Robert Hayes hadn't given up. He couldn't challenge Olivia directly, the board had made their decision, but he could undermine her in other ways. Whispered comments to clients, pointed questions in meetings. The slow, steady drip of doubt that was designed to erode confidence rather than destroy it outright. Olivia knew what he was doing. She also knew she couldn't stop it without playing into his hands, so she focused on what she could control: the work. The Meridian project was proceeding beautifully. Ryan's structural designs had exceeded every expectation, and the client was thrilled with the progress. New contracts were coming in, smaller than Meridian but steady, a sign that Summit's reputation remained intact despite the internal drama. And then, on a Thursday afternoon in late March, everything changed. Olivia was in her office reviewing construction timelines when Diana appeared in the doorway with an expression that made her blood run cold. "There's a reporter in the lobby, from the Seattle Times. She's asking about you and Ryan." The words hung in the air like a death sentence. "How did she find out?" "I don't know, but she's not leaving. She says she has sources. She says she's running a story with or without a comment from you." Olivia closed her eyes, feeling the walls close in around her. She'd known this was coming, had prepared for it even. But the reality was worse than she'd imagined. A story in the Seattle Times would make everything public. Her pregnancy, her relationship with Ryan, every detail of her personal life laid bare for the world to see. Hayes, she thought. This has his fingerprints all over it. She couldn't prove it, but she knew. "Send her up," she said finally. "Olivia, send her up. If she's running a story anyway, I might as well have some control over what she says." Diana hesitated, then nodded. "I'll bring her to the small conference room." "No, bring her here, to my office." "Are you sure?" "I'm sure." 5 minutes later, a woman in her 30s appeared in Olivia's doorway. She was attractive in a sharp, no-nonsense way, with short, dark hair and eyes that missed nothing. "Ms. Hart, thank you for seeing me. I'm Jennifer Walsh, Seattle Times." "I know who you are." Olivia gestured to the chair across from her desk. "Sit." Walsh sat, pulling out a notebook and pen. "Old-fashioned," Olivia noted. "A woman who trusted her own memory more than technology." "I'll get straight to the point," Walsh said. "I've received information suggesting that you're in a romantic relationship with one of your employees, Ryan Cole, a senior structural engineer. I've also heard rumors that you're pregnant with his child. Care to comment?" Olivia considered her options. She could deny everything, but that would only delay the inevitable. She could refuse to comment, but that would make her look guilty. Or she could do something she'd never done before. She could tell the truth. "Yes," she said, "to both." Walsh's eyebrows rose. Whatever she'd expected, it wasn't a direct admission. "I'm in a relationship with Ryan Cole. We disclosed it to HR several weeks ago, and appropriate safeguards have been implemented to prevent any conflicts of interest. I am also pregnant with his child." Olivia folded her hands on her desk, her voice steady despite the terror coursing through her veins. "Is there anything else you'd like to know?" Yes, several things." Walsh recovered quickly, her pen moving across the page. How long has the relationship been going on? When did it start? Were you aware of the company's policies regarding workplace relationships? The relationship began several months ago. I was aware of the policies and I followed them. The timing of the disclosure was a personal decision, but it was made as soon as the relationship became serious. Some might say that waiting several months to disclose was a deliberate attempt to hide the relationship. Some might say that a woman's personal life is her own business until it affects her professional responsibilities, which it hasn't. Walsh studied her for a long moment. You're not what I expected. What did you expect? Denial, deflection, the usual corporate runaround. She leaned back in her chair. Why are you being so honest with me? Olivia thought about the question, really thought about it. She could give a strategic answer, something about controlling the narrative or getting ahead of the story. But that wasn't the whole truth. Because I'm tired of hiding, she said finally. I've spent my entire career being careful, being perfect, being everything everyone expected a female CEO to be, twice as smart, twice as tough, twice as controlled as any man in the same position. She paused. I'm pregnant, Ms. Walsh. I'm in a relationship with a man I care about, and I'm not ashamed of either of those things. Walsh was quiet for a long moment, her pen still. That's quite a statement. It's the truth. And if this story damages your reputation, your company's stock price, your position as CEO, then I'll deal with it, the same way I've dealt with every other challenge in my career. Olivia met the reporter's eyes steadily. I didn't get where I am by running from difficult situations. I got here by facing them head on. Walsh closed her notebook slowly. I have to be honest with you, Ms. Hart. The information I received was designed to hurt you. Someone wanted this story to be a scandal, a takedown piece about a powerful woman brought low by personal indiscretion. I know. You know who leaked it? I have suspicions. Will you share them? Olivia shook her head. That's not my story to tell. And frankly, it doesn't matter. The facts are the facts. Someone's motivations for revealing them don't change what they are. Walsh stood, extending her hand. Thank you for your time, Ms. Hart. This wasn't the interview I expected. I hope that's a good thing. It is. Walsh paused at the door. For what it's worth, I think you're right. A woman's personal life shouldn't define her professional worth. But the world doesn't always work the way it should. I'm aware. Good luck, Ms. Hart. I think you're going to need it. After she left, Olivia sat alone in her office for a long time, watching the rain streak down her windows. She'd done something irreversible today. She'd handed a reporter the story that could destroy everything she'd built. But she'd also done something else, something that felt, for the first time in years, like freedom. She'd told the truth. Now she just had to wait and see what it would cost her. Ryan found her on the roof at sunset. She was standing at the edge, looking out at the city, her hair loose and blowing in the wind. The sky was painted in shades of orange and pink, the kind of dramatic Seattle sunset that only appeared after days of rain. Diana told me about the reporter, he said, coming to stand beside her. It's going to be a story, probably this weekend. How bad? I don't know yet. She turned to look at him, and he was struck again by how beautiful she was. Not the sharp, controlled beauty of the boardroom, but something softer, more real. I told her the truth. All of it. The relationship, the pregnancy, everything. Why? Because I'm tired of hiding. Because I refuse to be ashamed of something that makes me happy. She laughed softly. Because apparently falling in love with you has made me stupid. Ryan's heart stopped. Falling in love? She looked away, her cheeks flushing. I didn't mean to say that. But you did. Yes, I did. He reached out and took her hand, turning her to face him. Say it again. Ryan, please. She met his eyes, and he saw everything there, the fear, the hope, the desperate longing for something she'd never let herself want. I love you, she whispered. I didn't mean to. I didn't want to. I've spent my whole life avoiding exactly this feeling because I knew how dangerous it was. But here I am, standing on a rooftop, pregnant with your child, about to watch my carefully constructed life explode in the press. And the only thing I can think about is how much I love you." Ryan pulled her into his arms and held her tight, feeling her heart beat against his chest. "I love you too," he said into her hair. "I've been wanting to say it for weeks. I was just afraid it was too soon." "It probably is too soon." "I don't care." "Neither do I." She lifted her face and he kissed her, deeply, completely, the kind of kiss that contained every promise he wasn't yet ready to put into words. When they finally broke apart, both of them were breathless. "Whatever happens," he said, "we face it together. The story, the scandal, Hayes, the board, all of it. You and me, together." "And Lily?" "Lily already told me she's ready to fight anyone who's mean to you. She's been practicing her intimidating glare." Olivia laughed, a real laugh, bright and unburdened. "She gets that from you." "She gets that from her mother, actually. Sarah could terrify people with a single look." "Then it's genetic. The baby will probably inherit it too." "Great. A whole family of people who can glare me into submission." "You say that like it's a bad thing," Ryan grinned. "It's the best thing, all of it. Every terrifying, unpredictable, wonderful moment of it." They stood together as the sun sank below the horizon, painting the sky in deeper shades of red and gold. Tomorrow, the story would break. Tomorrow, everything would change again. But tonight, they had each other. And for now, that was everything. The story ran on Sunday morning. Olivia read it 3 times, sitting alone in her penthouse with a cup of herbal tea growing cold in her hands. The headline was sensational, of course. Summit CEO's Secret Romance, Pregnancy, Power, and Workplace Politics. But the content was surprisingly fair. Jennifer Walsh had done what she'd promised. She'd told the facts without embellishment, quoted Olivia's interview accurately, and even included context about the challenges facing women in corporate leadership. The tone wasn't sympathetic exactly, but it wasn't hostile either. It was honest. And honesty, Olivia was discovering, had a power of its own. Her phone began buzzing with messages almost immediately. Diana, offering to come in and handle the press inquiries. Charles Henderson, expressing support. Margaret Wu sending a string of heart emojis that seemed wildly out of character. Even some of the clients reached out, not with condemnation, but with curiosity and, in some cases, admiration. The Meridian group was notably silent, but Olivia wasn't worried. Gerald Hendricks cared about results, not gossip. As long as the project stayed on track, he would stay in their corner. The most meaningful message came from an unexpected source. Lily. "Dad showed me the article. Some people are being mean online, but I told him we should ignore them because mean people are just sad inside. I think you're brave. I'm proud of you. Can we have pizza for dinner?" Olivia read the message 5 times, tears streaming down her face. This, she thought, this is what I was afraid of losing. This is what I was protecting by staying alone. But she hadn't been protecting anything. She'd been hiding, and hiding wasn't the same as being safe. She picked up her phone and typed a reply. Olivia. "Thank you, Lily. That means more than you know. And yes to pizza. Extra cheese. Lily. You're learning. See you tonight." Olivia smiled, wiped her eyes, and got ready to face the world. She had a family now. And families, she was learning, made everything easier to bear. The weeks following the article's publication were unlike anything Olivia had experienced in her 20 years of corporate warfare. She had prepared for the worst. She had steeled herself for client defections, investor panic, a stock price in freefall. She had imagined boardroom confrontations, shareholder meetings turned hostile, the slow dismantling of everything she had built. Instead, something unexpected happened. People rallied. It started small. A supportive email from a female architect she had mentored years ago, a congratulatory card from the women in accounting, a bouquet of flowers delivered anonymously with a note that read simply, "About time someone showed them it's possible." Then it grew larger. Industry publications ran pieces about workplace relationships and modern leadership. A prominent business magazine requested an interview about balancing personal and professional life. A women's leadership organization invited her to speak at their annual conference. Summit's stock price dipped for exactly 3 days before rebounding to higher than it had been before the story broke. Clients who had initially expressed concern found themselves reassured by Olivia's direct handling of the situation. The Meridian project continued without interruption, with Gerald Hendricks reportedly telling his board that he didn't care who Olivia Hart was sleeping with as long as the building got finished on time and under budget. Even Robert Hayes had gone quiet, his campaign of whispered undermining suddenly lacking ammunition. The story had been told. The truth was out. There was nothing left to reveal, nothing left to weaponize. For the first time in months, Olivia could breathe. But breathing, she was discovering, came with its own challenges. The pregnancy was now undeniably visible. At 20 weeks, her carefully tailored suits had given way to more forgiving cuts, and even those were starting to strain. She found herself constantly adjusting, shifting, trying to find positions that didn't make her back ache or her ankles swell. Sleep came in fragments, interrupted by the baby's increasingly active movements and the relentless churning of her own thoughts. She was sitting in her office late on a Wednesday evening, one hand pressed against her stomach where the baby was performing what felt like acrobatics when Ryan appeared in her doorway. "Diana said you were still here." "Diana worries too much." "Diana's right to worry. You've been here since 6 in the morning." "There's a lot to do." "There's always a lot to do." He crossed the room and sat down on the edge of her desk, close enough that she could feel the warmth of him. "When's the last time you ate something that wasn't from a vending machine?" Olivia opened her mouth to answer, then realized she couldn't remember. "That long?" Ryan shook his head. "Come on, I'm taking you home. I have to finish the Thompson proposal." "The Thompson proposal can wait until tomorrow. It's due Friday. Then it can wait until Thursday." He stood and held out his hand. "Olivia, please. You're carrying our child. You need to rest." Our child. The words still sent a shiver down her spine every time she heard them. Not her child. Not his child. Theirs. She let him pull her to her feet, wincing as her back protested the movement. "I'm getting old," she muttered. "You're getting pregnant. There's a difference." "Is there?" "A significant one. Old means your best years are behind you. Pregnant means your best years are just beginning." He wrapped an arm around her waist, steadying her. "Now come on. I made dinner reservations at that Italian place you like." "Lucia's?" "The very same." "Ryan, I look like a whale." "You look like a goddess." "You're delusional." "Probably, but I'm also right." He kissed her forehead softly. "Come eat pasta with me. Let me take care of you for one evening." Olivia wanted to argue. She wanted to insist that she was fine, that she didn't need taking care of, that she had been handling everything by herself for 41 years and could continue doing so for 41 more. But the truth was, she was tired, bone-deep, soul-weary tired, and the idea of sitting in a quiet restaurant with Ryan, eating good food and talking about nothing in particular, sounded like heaven. "Fine," she said, "but I'm ordering dessert." "You can order 3 desserts if you want." "Don't tempt me." They walked out together, his arms still around her waist, and for once, Olivia didn't care who might be watching. Lucia's was warm and welcoming, the same corner booth waiting for them as if it had been reserved permanently. Olivia sank into the leather seat with a sigh of relief, kicking off her shoes beneath the table and stretching her swollen feet. "Better?" Ryan asked. "Much." The server appeared with water and menus, but Olivia waved the menus away. "I know what I want. The mushroom risotto, extra truffle oil, and the tiramisu." "And for you, sir?" "I'll have the same, minus the tiramisu." Ryan grinned at Olivia. "I have a feeling she's going to want mine too." "I would never." "You absolutely would." "Okay, I absolutely would." The server disappeared, and they were alone in their bubble of warmth and candlelight. Olivia felt something release in her chest, a tension she hadn't even realized she was carrying. "Thank you," she said quietly. "For what?" "For this. For dragging me out of the office, for making me eat something." She paused. "For being you." Ryan reached across the table and took her hand. "You don't have to thank me for caring about you. That's kind of the baseline requirement for a relationship." "It's new for me." "I know. I've been alone for a long time. I got used to it. I got comfortable with it even." She turned her hand in his, interlacing their fingers. "This, you, Lily, the baby, It scares me more than anything has ever scared me. More than the board meeting? Much more. More than the Seattle Times article? Infinitely more. More than Robert Hayes? Robert Hayes is a mosquito. This is, she searched for the right word. This is an earthquake. Everything I thought I knew about my life, about myself, about what I wanted, it's all been shaken loose. And I don't know what's going to be left standing when it's over. Ryan was quiet for a moment, his thumb tracing circles on her palm. Can I tell you something? He said finally. Always. After Sarah died, I thought I would never feel anything again. Not just love. Anything. Happiness, hope, excitement about the future. It was like someone had reached inside me and turned off a switch. I went through the motions for Lily's sake, but inside I was just empty. Olivia squeezed his hand but didn't speak. Moving to Seattle was supposed to be practical. A fresh start, a new job, a place where I could focus on being a good father without all the memories dragging me down. I wasn't looking for love. I wasn't looking for connection. I was looking for survival. And then I met you. He smiled, a soft, wondering expression. This brilliant, terrifying, impossibly beautiful woman who ran the company like a general commanding an army. And I thought, that's someone who has it all figured out. That's someone who doesn't need anything from anyone. I don't have it figured out. I never did. I know that now, but at the time you seemed invincible, and I was so broken that invincibility looked like safety. He paused. And then that night at the Four Seasons happened, and I saw something I'd never seen before. What? You, the real you. Not the CEO, not the Ice Queen, not the persona you wear like armor. Just Olivia, scared and lonely and desperate for someone to see her. Olivia's eyes burned with tears she refused to let fall. I saw myself, Ryan continued, in you. I saw someone who had built walls so high they'd forgotten there was anything outside them, and I thought, maybe we could help each other remember. Is that why you stayed? That night? That's why I came back. That night, I stayed because I couldn't bear to leave. Because being with you was the first time in 3 years I'd felt alive. He lifted her hand and pressed a kiss to her knuckles. And now I stay because I love you. Because you're carrying our child. Because when I imagine the future, you're in every picture. The tears spilled over. Olivia didn't try to stop them. I don't deserve you, she whispered. That's not how love works. How does it work? Damned if I know. He smiled through his own tears. But I think it's something like this. Two broken people who found each other. Who decided to try, even when trying was terrifying. Who chose each other, every day, despite all the reasons they shouldn't. That sounds messy. It is messy, but it's also beautiful. And I'd rather have messy and beautiful than clean and empty. The food arrived. Steaming plates of risotto that smelled like heaven, and they ate in comfortable silence, both of them processing the weight of what had just been said. Olivia found that she was ravenous, demolishing her portion in record time and eyeing Ryan's plate with obvious interest. Don't even think about it, he said, pulling his plate closer. I'm eating for two. The baby is the size of a banana. They don't need that much risotto. How do you know? Maybe they're a banana who really loves risotto. That's not how biology works. Are you a biology expert now? I have a third grader. I know things. Olivia laughed. A real laugh, free and unburdened, and Ryan slid his plate across the table with a dramatic sigh. Fine. Take it. I can never say no to you. I know. It's one of my favorite things about you. She finished his risotto and most of the tiramisu, and by the time they left the restaurant, she felt more content than she had in weeks. Ryan drove her back to her penthouse, walked her to the door, and kissed her goodnight with a tenderness that made her heart ache. Stay, she said. What? Stay tonight. With me. She felt heat rise in her cheeks, which was ridiculous. She was 41 years old and pregnant with his child, far past the point of being embarrassed about intimacy. I don't want to be alone. Ryan's expression softened. What about Lily? Hannah's with her, right? She can stay one more night. Are you sure? I'm sure. He hesitated for only a moment. Then he smiled, took her hand, and followed her inside. That night, Olivia discovered something she had never known before. There was a difference between being alone and being lonely. She had been alone for years, by choice, by design, by the careful architecture of a life that prioritized success over connection. But she hadn't let herself feel the loneliness because feeling it would have meant admitting there was something missing. Now, lying in Ryan's arms in the darkness of her bedroom, listening to his steady breathing and feeling the baby kick gently against her belly, she finally understood what had been missing. This, connection, belonging, the simple, profound comfort of another person's presence. She fell asleep with a smile on her face and didn't dream at all. The next morning, Ryan made her breakfast. It was a simple thing: scrambled eggs, toast, orange juice that he'd found in her otherwise barren refrigerator, but Olivia watched him move around her kitchen with something close to wonder. No one had ever made her breakfast before. No one had ever been here in the morning, rumpled and half awake, comfortable enough to search through her cabinets for plates and pans. "You're staring," he said without turning around. "I'm observing." Observation is just staring with better PR. Did Lily teach you that? Lily teaches me many things. Most of them are about dinosaurs, but occasionally there's a life lesson thrown in. He slid a plate of eggs in front of her and sat down across the table. "Eat. You need protein. You're very bossy in the morning." "I'm a single parent. Being bossy is a survival mechanism." Olivia took a bite of the eggs, which were surprisingly good, and considered the man sitting across from her. His hair was still mussed from sleep. He was wearing yesterday's clothes, wrinkled beyond redemption. He had a smear of butter on his chin that he hadn't noticed yet. He was the most beautiful thing she had ever seen. "Ryan," she said. "Move in with me." The words were out before she could stop them, before she could analyze or strategize or calculate the risks. Ryan's fork froze halfway to his mouth. "What?" "Move in with me. You and Lily. This apartment has 3 bedrooms I never use. There's a park across the street. There's a school nearby that has excellent ratings. We could—" She trailed off, suddenly uncertain. "We could be a family, a real one, under the same roof." Ryan set down his fork very carefully. "Olivia, that's a big step." "I know. Lily's been through a lot. Stability is important for her." "I know. And we've only been officially together for a few months." "I know. So maybe we should think about it, take some time, make sure." "Ryan." She reached across the table and took his hand. "I've spent my entire life thinking, analyzing, making sure, and all it got me was 41 years of being alone." She paused. "I don't want to think anymore. I want to live. I want to wake up every morning with you and Lily and this baby. I want to trip over Lego bricks and argue about what to watch on TV and have Sunday breakfasts that turn into Sunday lunches because we're too busy talking to notice the time." "That sounds chaotic." "I know. I'm terrified." "Then why?" "Because I love you. Because I love Lily. Because, for the first time in my life, I'm more afraid of losing something than I am of having it." Her voice cracked. "Please, Ryan, please say yes." He was quiet for so long that Olivia began to panic. She'd moved too fast, pushed too hard, asked for too much. She'd finally found something worth keeping, and she was going to lose it because she didn't know how to be patient, didn't know how to— "Yes." The word was barely a whisper. "What?" "Yes." Ryan's face broke into a smile so radiant it stole her breath. "Yes, I'll move in with you. Yes, I'll wake up with you every morning. Yes, I'll trip over Lego bricks and argue about TV shows and have endless Sunday breakfasts." He stood up, came around the table, and pulled her into his arms. Yes to all of it, every chaotic, terrifying, beautiful moment. Olivia buried her face in his chest and let the tears come. "I didn't think you'd say yes," she mumbled against his shirt. "I've been saying yes to you since the moment we met. You just weren't listening." "I was listening. I was just too scared to hear." "And now?" She lifted her face to look at him, her cheeks wet, her heart fuller than it had ever been. "Now I hear everything." Telling Lily was Ryan's responsibility, and he approached it with the care of a man defusing a bomb. He picked her up from school that afternoon, took her for ice cream at her favorite shop, and waited until she had a mouthful of chocolate chip cookie dough before dropping the news. "So," he said casually, "how would you feel about moving?" Lily's eyes went wide. "Moving? Moving where? Are we leaving Seattle? I don't want to leave Seattle. I have friends here. Mrs. Patterson says I'm her best student. There's a science fair coming up, and I already have my project planned and not leaving Seattle, just moving to a different apartment, a bigger one." "Oh." She relaxed slightly. "Why?" "Because Olivia asked us to move in with her." Lily froze, her spoon halfway to her mouth, a drip of ice cream threatening to land on her shirt. "Move in with Olivia? Like live with her? All the time?" "That's the general idea." "Like a family?" "Yes, like a family." For a long moment, Lily just stared at him, processing. Ryan could see the wheels turning in her head, the questions forming, the calculations being made. She was her mother's daughter in that way, always thinking, always analyzing, never accepting anything at face value. "Will I have my own room?" "Yes. A bigger one than you have now. Can I bring my dinosaur collection? All 47 of them." "Will Olivia be there in the mornings?" "Sometimes. She has to work, but she'll be home a lot more than she used to be." "Will she help with my homework?" "She said she would. Even the math. She has to help with the math because you're terrible at it." "I'm not terrible at math." "Dad, you had to Google how to do long division last week." "That was a complicated problem." "It was fourth grade math." Ryan sighed. "Fine. She'll help with the math." Lily was quiet for another long moment, stirring her ice cream into a chocolatey soup. Then she looked up at him with an expression that was suddenly, startlingly serious. "Will the baby live with us too?" Ryan's heart clenched. This was the question he'd been bracing for, the one that mattered most. "Yes," he said softly. "When the baby is born, they'll live with all of us. You, me, Olivia, and your new sibling. So I'll really be a big sister. You'll really be a big sister. And Olivia will really be, what, my stepmom? If that's okay with you?" Lily set down her spoon, her face thoughtful. Mom would have liked her. The words hit Ryan like a physical blow. He hadn't expected that, hadn't prepared for the sudden surge of grief and love and gratitude that flooded through him. "You think so?" "Yeah." Lily nodded firmly. "Mom always said the strongest people are the ones who aren't afraid to be scared. And Olivia's scared all the time, but she does stuff anyway. That's brave. Mom would have liked that." Ryan reached across the table and took his daughter's hand. "You're pretty smart, you know that?" "I know. Mrs. Patterson says I'm gifted. And modest. Modesty is overrated. Mom said that too." He laughed through the tears he couldn't quite hold back. "She did say that, didn't she?" "All the time." Lily squeezed his hand. "I miss her, Dad." "I know, baby. I miss her too. But I think it's okay to be happy too. I think she'd want us to be happy." "Yeah." Ryan wiped his eyes. "I think she would too." They finished their ice cream in comfortable silence, and when they walked out into the afternoon sunshine, Lily slipped her hand into his with the easy trust of a child who knew she was loved. "So when do we move?" she asked. "Whenever we're ready. I'm ready now." "Then I guess we should start packing." "Can I bring the volcano I made, the papier-mâché one? The one that took over the kitchen for 3 weeks?" It was scientifically important. It was a fire hazard. "Can I bring it or not?" Ryan looked down at his daughter's determined face and knew he'd already lost this battle. "Fine, but it goes in your room." Lily grinned. "Deal." The move happened faster than anyone expected. Within 2 weeks, Ryan and Lily's belongings had been transported across town to Olivia's penthouse. The spare bedroom was transformed into a little girl's paradise. Purple walls, dinosaur posters, a bookshelf crammed with science books and fantasy novels, and the infamous papier-mâché volcano occupying pride of place on the desk. Olivia's sleek, minimalist apartment gradually accumulated the beautiful chaos of family life. Lily's backpack appeared by the door. Ryan's coffee maker took up residence on the kitchen counter. Drawings and school projects migrated to the refrigerator. The living room, once immaculate, now featured a permanent Lego construction zone in one corner. It should have driven Olivia crazy. She had spent years cultivating order, control, the precise arrangement of her environment. Now there were shoes in unexpected places and half-empty juice boxes on end tables and the constant, wonderful noise of people living. She loved every moment of it. The three of them fell into a rhythm with surprising ease. Mornings were chaotic. Lily searching for lost homework, Ryan burning toast, Olivia on conference calls while simultaneously braiding a third grader's hair. But there was joy in the chaos, a warmth that filled the apartment like sunlight. Evenings were quieter, homework at the kitchen table, dinner together, the negotiated ritual of deciding whose turn it was to pick the movie. Lily usually won those negotiations, which meant a lot of animated films about brave heroines and talking animals. Olivia pretended to be bored, but Ryan caught her crying during the sad parts more than once. And at night, after Lily was asleep and the apartment had settled into stillness, Olivia and Ryan would sit together on the balcony, watching the city lights and talking about everything and nothing. It was, Olivia realized, the happiest she had ever been. But happiness, she was learning, didn't mean the absence of challenges. The first major conflict came 3 weeks after the move, when Lily came home from school in tears. "What happened?" Olivia asked, instantly alert. Ryan was still at work, and she'd been handling the afternoon pickup, a new arrangement they'd implemented to give her more time with Lily. "Madison Cooper is a stupid jerk," Lily announced, throwing herself onto the couch. "That's not a very nice thing to say." She said not very nice things first. Lily wiped her eyes with her sleeve. "She said my family is weird because my dad is with his boss and my mom is dead, and the baby isn't going to be my real sibling because we don't have the same mom." Olivia felt a cold fury rise in her chest. She wanted to march down to the school, find Madison Cooper's parents, and deliver a lecture on basic human decency that would make them question every life choice they'd ever made. But that wouldn't help Lily. Not right now. She sat down on the couch, keeping a careful distance, not wanting to crowd a child who was clearly hurting. "Can I tell you something?" she asked. Lily nodded, sniffling. "When I was your age, kids said mean things to me too. They made fun of my clothes, my family, everything they could think of." "What did you do?" "At first, I let it hurt me. I came home crying every day. I thought maybe they were right. Maybe there was something wrong with me." "Was there?" "No." Olivia shook her head firmly. There was something wrong with them. They were unhappy, and unhappy people sometimes try to make others feel bad because it makes them feel better about themselves. Lily considered this. "So Madison is unhappy?" "I don't know Madison, but I know that happy, secure people don't go around telling other kids their families are weird." "But our family is kind of weird, isn't it?" Olivia felt her heart crack open. "Maybe," she admitted, "but weird isn't bad. Weird just means different, and different can be wonderful." "How?" "Well, think about it. How many kids have a big sister who knows 47 different species of dinosaurs? 48. I learned about the Giganotosaurus last week. 48. And how many kids have a dad who makes the world's best pancakes when he doesn't burn them?" A small smile flickered across Lily's face. "The burnt ones are pretty bad. They're terrible, but the good ones are worth it." Olivia hesitated, then continued softly. "And how many kids have a baby brother or sister on the way who's going to look up to them, learn from them, want to be just like them?" "Madison doesn't have any siblings." "Then she doesn't know what she's missing." Lily was quiet for a long moment. Then, without warning, she launched herself across the couch and wrapped her arms around Olivia. "I'm glad you're my family," she mumbled against Olivia's shoulder. Olivia froze for a moment, surprised by the sudden contact. Physical affection was still new to her, still unfamiliar, still slightly terrifying. But she forced herself to relax, to wrap her arms around this small, fierce, wonderful girl and hold her tight. "I'm glad you're my family too," she whispered. They stayed that way for a long time, until Lily pulled back with a determined expression. "I'm going to tell Madison that weird families are the best families, and if she doesn't believe me, I'm going to tell her about the Giganotosaurus." "What does the Giganotosaurus have to do with anything?" "Nothing, but it's really cool and she'll be jealous that she doesn't know about it." Olivia laughed. "That's one approach." "Mrs. Patterson says education is the best weapon against ignorance." "Mrs. Patterson sounds like a smart woman." "She is. She's my favorite teacher." Lily paused. You're my favorite Olivia. I'm the only Olivia you know. Exactly. That's why you're my favorite. Ryan found them an hour later, sitting on the living room floor surrounded by dinosaur books, Lily explaining the evolutionary differences between theropods and sauropods, while Olivia took notes like she was preparing for an exam. Should I be worried? He asked. Dad, did you know that the T-Rex had the strongest bite of any land animal that ever lived? I did not know that. Olivia knows now. I taught her. I can see that. He looked at Olivia, a question in his eyes. She gave him a small nod, a signal that said, later. I'll explain later. Who's hungry? Ryan asked. I was thinking pizza. Pizza! Lily jumped up. Can we get the one with extra cheese? Is there any other kind? No, that's why I asked. As Lily raced to get the pizza menu, Ryan sat down beside Olivia on the floor. Everything okay? Now it is. She leaned against his shoulder. Your daughter is remarkable, you know that? I'm aware. She told me weird families are the best families. That sounds like something she'd say. I'm starting to believe she's right. Ryan kissed the top of her head. She usually is. It's annoying, honestly. From the kitchen, Lily's voice rang out. I heard that. You were supposed to. You're still annoying. And you're still my favorite. Olivia listened to their banter, feeling something settle in her chest, something warm and solid and permanent. This was what family felt like. The arguments and the laughter, the chaos and the comfort, the small moments that added up to something bigger than any of them. She pressed a hand to her stomach, where the baby was kicking up a storm. Your sibling is already making their presence known, she murmured. Is that good? Ryan asked. It's perfect. And for the first time in her life, Olivia truly believed it. The pregnancy entered its third trimester with all the subtlety of a freight train. Olivia, who had spent decades priding herself on her ability to work through any obstacle, found herself confronting an enemy she couldn't negotiate with or intimidate. Her own body. The baby was growing rapidly, pressing against her organs, stealing her breath, making every movement an exercise in careful planning. She tried to maintain her usual schedule. She lasted exactly 1 week before Diana staged an intervention. You have to slow down, Diana said, standing in the doorway of Olivia's office with an expression that brooked no argument. Your doctors have said so. Your partner has said so. Your 8-year-old stepdaughter has said so. I am now saying so. I have a company to run. You have a company that will run itself for a few weeks while you focus on not giving birth in a conference room. That's dramatic. You had 3 Braxton Hicks contractions during yesterday's board meeting. They were mild. Robert Hayes thought you were having a heart attack. Robert Hayes thinks any sign of human weakness is a heart attack. Olivia paused. Although I admit his expression was satisfying. Diana's lips twitched, but she held her ground. I've already spoken with Charles Henderson. He's agreed to handle the quarterly review. Margaret Wu is covering the client presentations. The Meridian project is ahead of schedule and doesn't need your constant supervision. You went behind my back. I went around your stubbornness. There's a difference. Olivia wanted to argue. She wanted to insist that she was fine, that she could handle everything, that taking time off was a sign of weakness that would give her enemies ammunition. But Diana was right. And more importantly, the baby was more important than any board meeting. Fine, she said finally, but I'm still taking calls. You can take calls. And reviewing contracts. You can review contracts from home. And if anything goes wrong, I will call you immediately. But Olivia, Diana's expression softened. Nothing is going to go wrong. You've built something solid here. Trust it. Trust us. It was perhaps the most personal thing Diana had ever said to her. Thank you, Olivia said quietly, for everything. Not just this. For 7 years of putting up with me. Putting up with you is my job. Caring about you is my choice. Diana smiled. Now go home. Your family is waiting. Olivia went home. The final weeks of pregnancy were a strange limbo, time suspended between the life Olivia had known and the life waiting to begin. She spent her days in a haze of rest and preparation, organizing the nursery with Lily's enthusiastic help, reading baby books that made her feel alternately confident and terrified, having long conversations with Ryan about names and parenting philosophies and the thousand small decisions that would shape their child's life. And through it all, the baby grew. She could feel it now, really feel it. Not just kicks and movements, but a presence, a person. Someone who would soon be in her arms, looking up at her with new eyes, depending on her for everything. The responsibility was terrifying, but it was also exhilarating. Hannah came up from Portland for the final stretch, moving into the guest room that had once been Lily's and becoming an essential part of the household. She cooked meals that actually had nutritional value, helped Lily with homework, and provided Ryan with the emotional support of a sister who had known him his whole life. "You're good for him," Hannah told Olivia one evening when they found themselves alone in the kitchen while Ryan put Lily to bed. "Better than I expected." That's not a ringing endorsement. You haven't met Ryan's previous girlfriends. There were previous girlfriends? A few, after Sarah. None of them lasted. They either couldn't handle Lily or couldn't handle his grief. Hannah paused. "You handle both." "I don't handle anything. I just love him." "Same thing," Hannah smiled. For what it's worth, Sarah would have approved. She always said Ryan needed someone who could match him, someone strong enough to push back, smart enough to challenge him, brave enough to love him despite all his flaws. He doesn't have that many flaws. He sings in the shower, loudly, off-key. Okay, that's one flaw. He also refuses to admit when he's wrong about directions. Two flaws. And he cries at commercials, not just sad commercials. Happy ones. Animal commercials, car commercials. That one about the paper towels where the kid makes a mess and the mom just smiles. Olivia laughed. Okay, he's deeply flawed. The most deeply flawed person I know. Hannah's expression turned serious. But he's also the best person I know, and he deserves to be happy. I'm glad he found that with you. I'm glad I found that with him. They looked at each other, two women who had come to care about the same man from different angles and reached an understanding that didn't need words. "Now," Hannah said, breaking the moment with a grin, "let me show you the baby pictures Ryan doesn't want you to see." "There are baby pictures?" "So many baby pictures, including one where he's wearing a tutu." "Why was he wearing a tutu?" "I was 5 and I wanted a sister." He was an accommodating brother. Olivia settled in for what promised to be an enlightening evening. The contractions started at 3 in the morning on a Tuesday. Olivia woke to a tightening sensation across her abdomen, stronger than the Braxton Hicks she'd been experiencing for weeks. She lay still for a moment, breathing through it, waiting to see if it would pass. It didn't. "Ryan," she shook his shoulder. "Ryan, wake up." "Hmm?" "I think it's time." He was fully awake in an instant, his eyes snapping open, his body already moving toward the edge of the bed. "Now? Are you sure? How far apart are they? Should I call the hospital? Where's the bag? Did we pack the bag? I can't remember if we packed the bag." "We packed the bag. It's by the door." "Right, the door. Okay." He ran his hands through his hair, looking slightly wild. "Okay, I'm calm. I'm completely calm. You don't look calm." "I'm internally calm." "Ryan?" "Yes?" "Put on pants." He looked down at his boxers, then back at her, then back at his boxers. "Right, pants, good idea." Olivia would have laughed if another contraction hadn't chosen that moment to hit. The next few hours were a blur of timing contractions, calling the hospital, waking Hannah to stay with Lily, and driving through the pre-dawn streets of Seattle with Ryan gripping the steering wheel like his life depended on it. "You're going to be fine," he kept saying. "Everything's going to be fine. We practiced this. We have a plan." The plan didn't include you running 2 red lights. They were yellow. They were extremely red. The baby's coming. Traffic laws are suggestions. That's not how laws work. It's how they work tonight. They made it to the hospital in record time, which Olivia suspected had less to do with traffic conditions and more to do with Ryan's creative interpretation of speed limits. The staff was expecting them. Diana had called ahead, because Diana always called ahead. And within minutes, Olivia was in a delivery room, hooked up to monitors, surrounded by medical professionals who spoke to her in calm, reassuring voices. And through it all, Ryan was there, holding her hand, breathing with her, telling her she was strong, she was brave, she was doing amazing. I hate you, she informed him at one point during a particularly brutal contraction. I hate you for doing this to me. That's fair. I'm never having sex with you again. Also fair. I mean it. I know. Stop being so understanding. Can't help it. I love you too much to argue. She wanted to yell at him, but another contraction hit and all she could do was squeeze his hand and try to remember how to breathe. Hours passed. The contractions grew stronger, closer together, more intense than anything Olivia had ever experienced. She, who had faced down corporate raiders and hostile boards and the weight of an empire, found herself humbled by the primal force of bringing new life into the world. And then, finally, after what felt like an eternity and no time at all, she heard a sound that changed everything. A cry. Thin and wavering and impossibly perfect. "It's a girl," the doctor announced. "A healthy baby girl." They placed her on Olivia's chest, this tiny, squirming, red-faced creature who was already the most beautiful thing she had ever seen. She was crying, her small fists waving, her eyes scrunched shut against the bright lights of the delivery room. But when Olivia's hand touched her back, she quieted. Just for a moment, just long enough to seem like recognition. "Hi," Olivia whispered, tears streaming down her face. "Hi, baby girl. I'm your mom." Ryan was crying too, openly, unashamedly, the tears running down his cheeks as he looked at his daughter for the first time. "She's perfect," he said. "She's ours. She's perfect because she's ours." They stayed that way for a long time, the three of them, while the world outside the hospital continued its relentless march forward. Deals were made and broken, companies rose and fell. The sun came up over Seattle, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold. But in that small room, none of it mattered. There was only this moment, this family, this new beginning. When Lily arrived 2 hours later, dragged from sleep by Hannah, with the news that she had a baby sister, she approached the hospital bed with the reverence of someone entering sacred space. "She's so small," she whispered, looking at the bundle in Olivia's arms. "Was I that small?" "Smaller, actually," Ryan said. "You were premature 2 weeks early. I was impatient. You still are. Can I hold her?" Olivia shifted carefully, positioning the baby so Lily could see her face. The newborn was sleeping now, her features soft and peaceful, her tiny fingers curled into loose fists. "Be very gentle," Olivia said. Lily reached out and touched her sister's hand with one finger. The baby's fist uncurled slightly, wrapping around Lily's finger with surprising strength. "She's holding me," Lily breathed. "She knows you already," Ryan said. "How?" "She's been listening to your voice for months. All those times you talked to Olivia's stomach, read stories to the baby, told her about dinosaurs. She heard all of it." Lily's eyes filled with tears. "So she already knows me?" "She already loves you." The 8-year-old looked at her father, then at Olivia, then back at the baby who was still holding her finger. "I'm going to be the best big sister ever," she said firmly. "We know," Olivia said softly. "We've always known." And in that moment, watching Lily bond with her new sister, watching Ryan's face shine with a joy that seemed to light him from within, Olivia felt something shift inside her. The last of her walls came down. Not with a crash, but with a whisper. Not all at once, but slowly, gently, like spring thaw melting winter ice. She had spent 41 years building defenses against a world that had hurt her. She had achieved everything she'd set out to achieve: wealth, power, respect, success. But this small room, this exhausted body, this man and his daughter, and this perfect, precious baby, this was worth more than all of it. This was everything. "What are we going to name her?" Lily asked. Ryan and Olivia looked at each other. They had discussed names for months, debated options, made lists and crossed them out, and started over again. "Grace," Olivia said finally. "Her name is Grace." "Why Grace?" Olivia looked at Ryan, at Lily, at the baby sleeping peacefully in her arms. "Because she's the unexpected gift that changed everything. Because she brought us together. Because sometimes the best things in life aren't planned. They're given." Lily nodded seriously. "Grace is a good name. Strong. Like her sister. Like her whole family." Ryan wrapped his arms around all three of them. Olivia and Lily and baby Grace, and held them close. "Welcome to the world, Grace," he said softly. "You have no idea how loved you already are." Outside the window, Seattle was waking up to a new day. Somewhere in the city, Summit Architecture was humming along without its CEO. Robert Hayes was probably plotting his next move. The Meridian project was reaching its final stages. The world was full of challenges and complications and battles still to be fought, but none of that mattered right now. Right now, there was only family, only love, only this moment, perfect and complete. Olivia Hart, the Ice Queen of Seattle, closed her eyes and let herself feel something she had never allowed before. Peace. 6 months later, Seattle was experiencing one of those rare, perfect days that made residents forgive the endless gray winters. The sky was impossibly blue, the mountains visible in crystalline clarity, the city gleaming like a jewel beside the water. Olivia stood at the window of her corner office, watching the light play across the skyline, but her attention wasn't on the view. It was on the photo that now occupied the corner of her desk, a family portrait taken at Grace's 3-month birthday. All 4 of them crowded together on the couch, Lily holding her baby sister with the fierce pride of a devoted big sister, Ryan's arm around Olivia's shoulders, everyone smiling like they had forgotten there was any other way to be. She touched the frame lightly, still marveling at how much her life had changed. The office door opened behind her, and Diana appeared with her tablet and her usual air of efficient concern. "The board meeting is in 30 minutes. Charles Henderson just arrived. Margaret Wu is on her way up. And Robert Hayes?" "What about Robert Hayes?" Diana's expression shifted, something like satisfaction flickering beneath her professional mask. "He submitted his resignation this morning, effective immediately." Olivia turned from the window, genuinely surprised. "His resignation?" "Apparently his position on the board has become untenable." Those were his exact words. "What happened?" "From what I understand, some of his more questionable business dealings came to light. Nothing to do with Summit directly, but enough to make the other board members uncomfortable with his continued presence." Diana paused. "It seems karma has a sense of timing." Olivia absorbed this information, waiting for the surge of triumph she had expected to feel. Robert Hayes had been a thorn in her side for years, had tried to destroy her career, had weaponized her personal life against her. His downfall should have felt like victory. Instead, she felt something closer to relief, and perhaps a touch of pity. "Send him a card," she said finally. Diana's eyebrows rose. "A card?" "Something tasteful, wishing him well in his future endeavors." "After everything he did?" "Because of everything he did." Olivia returned to her desk, settling into her chair with the ease of someone who had finally made peace with her position. "He taught me something important. He showed me what happens when you let fear and resentment drive your decisions. I don't want to become that." "You could never become that." "Everyone could become that. The trick is choosing not to." She smiled. "Now, what else is on the agenda?" Diana consulted her tablet. "The Meridian completion ceremony is scheduled for next week. Gerald Hendricks has requested that you give the keynote speech. The new client contracts are ready for review. And Ryan called. Lily's science fair project won first place. She wants to celebrate with pizza." Pizza again? She's 9. Pizza is a food group." "Fine. Tell her we'll do pizza, but she has to eat a vegetable first. She'll negotiate. She always negotiates. That's what I like about her." Diana made a note, then hesitated. "There's one more thing. The Women's Leadership Conference called again. They're very eager to confirm your keynote for next month." Olivia had been putting off this decision for weeks. The conference wanted her to speak about balancing career and family, about breaking barriers, about being a role model for the next generation of female executives. It was the kind of exposure that would cement her reputation as more than just a successful CEO, as a symbol of what was possible. But it also meant opening up in ways she had spent her entire life avoiding. "Tell them yes," she said finally. "Really? Really, it's time." She looked at the family photo on her desk. "Someone once told me that hiding isn't the same as being safe. I've been hiding from this opportunity for too long." Diana's professional mask cracked into a genuine smile. "I'll confirm the details." "Thank you, Diana. For everything. Just doing my job. We both know you do far more than your job. Olivia caught her assistant's eye. I don't say it enough, but you've been essential to my survival here. Not just professionally, personally. Diana blinked, clearly surprised by the directness. Thank you. That means a lot. It's the truth, and I'm trying to be better about saying true things even when they're uncomfortable. The new Olivia Hart. The real Olivia Hart. She was always there. She just needed a reason to come out. The board meeting was unlike any Olivia had chaired before. For the first time in her tenure as CEO, she wasn't fighting. She wasn't defending or strategizing or watching for attacks from every angle. The atmosphere around the table was collaborative, almost warm. Robert Hayes' empty chair was like a weight lifted from the room. Revenue is up 17% over the same quarter last year, Olivia reported, walking them through the numbers with her usual precision. The Meridian project is coming in under budget and ahead of schedule. Client satisfaction ratings are at historic highs, and our employee retention rate has improved by 23%. Impressive numbers, Charles Henderson said, and for once there was no subtext, no hidden agenda, just genuine appreciation. The numbers reflect the team's work, not just mine. Olivia clicked to the next slide. I want to particularly acknowledge Ryan Cole's contributions to the structural engineering department. His innovations on the Meridian project have already generated interest from 3 other major clients. She caught a few knowing looks around the table, but they were good-natured rather than judgmental. The scandal she had feared, the career-ending catastrophe Robert Hayes had tried to engineer, none of it had materialized. Instead, her transparency had earned respect. Her willingness to be human had made her more effective, not less. There is one more item I'd like to discuss, she continued. I've been approached about establishing a mentorship program for young women in architecture. A formal initiative sponsored by Summit, designed to address the gender gap in our industry. Margaret Wu leaned forward with interest. What would that entail? Internships, shadowing programs, scholarships for architecture students from underrepresented backgrounds. I'd like Summit to be at the forefront of changing who gets to build the future. The room was quiet for a moment. Then Charles Henderson spoke. I think that's an excellent idea. I move that we allocate initial funding for a feasibility study. Seconded, Margaret Wu said immediately. The vote was unanimous. After the meeting, as the board members filed out, Charles Henderson lingered. You've changed, he said, not unkindly. This past year. You're different. Good different or bad different? Good. Definitely good. He smiled, the weathered face creasing with genuine warmth. You were always brilliant, Olivia, but you used to be brilliant like a weapon. Now you're brilliant like a light. She didn't know what to say to that, so she simply nodded. Whatever's causing it, the family, the baby, that young man of yours, keep doing it. It suits you. He left, and Olivia stood alone in the boardroom, looking out at the city she had conquered and the life she had almost missed. The Meridian completion ceremony was everything Olivia had worked toward, and nothing she had expected. The building rose against the Seattle skyline like a sculpture, all sweeping curves and sustainable materials, and the kind of innovative design that would be studied in architecture schools for decades. Gerald Hendricks beamed beside her as cameras flashed and reporters shouted questions, and the governor of Washington cut the ceremonial ribbon. But Olivia's attention kept drifting to the small group standing at the edge of the crowd. Ryan, holding Grace in his arms, the baby wearing a tiny dress that Lily had insisted on choosing. Lily herself, practically vibrating with excitement, clutching the blue ribbon from her science fair victory like a talisman. Hannah, who had come up from Portland for the occasion, snapping photos on her phone with the dedication of a professional documentarian. Her family. The word still felt new, still carried the weight of revelation every time she let herself think it. Ms. Hart? A reporter pushed forward, microphone extended. Any comments on the completion of your biggest project to date? I'm incredibly proud of what we've accomplished here, Olivia said, the word smooth and practiced. This building represents the future of sustainable architecture, proof that we can create something beautiful and functional while respecting our environment. And on a personal note, you've had quite a year. A new baby, a public relationship, Robert Hayes leaving the board? A year ago, this question would have made her defensive. She would have deflected, redirected, shut down the personal inquiry with corporate precision. Instead, she smiled. On a personal note, I've learned that the most successful projects are the ones we build with other people. This building took hundreds of collaborators to create. My family took the same kind of collaboration, people willing to take risks together, to trust each other, to believe that the end result would be worth the effort. So you're saying business and personal life aren't so different? I'm saying they're both about relationships, about finding the right people and choosing to build something together. She glanced toward her family again, catching Ryan's eye. He smiled and something warm spread through her chest. Everything else is just details. The reporter looked like she wanted to ask more, but the ceremony was moving forward, and Olivia was swept into the current of handshakes and congratulations and the triumphant hum of success. Later, after the crowd had thinned and the officials had departed, she found Ryan waiting for her by the building's entrance. Grace was asleep in his arms, her small face peaceful, her tiny hand curled around his finger. "Nice speech," he said. "Nice building." "I had a good boss." "You had a demanding boss." "Same thing." He leaned in to kiss her, careful not to disturb the baby. Lily's already decided she wants to be an architect when she grows up. She spent the entire ceremony sketching ideas for her own sustainable building. What's she designing? A dinosaur museum, naturally. Naturally. They stood together, looking up at the building they had created, and Olivia felt something settle in her chest. Not just pride, though there was plenty of that. Something deeper. Something like completion. "I want to marry you," she said. The words came out without planning, without strategy, without any of the careful calculation that had defined her life. Ryan went still. "What?" "I want to marry you." She turned to face him, her heart pounding. "I know we've only been together for a year. I know there are 1,000 reasons to wait. But I've spent my whole life waiting for the right moment, the safe choice, the controlled outcome. And I'm done waiting." "Olivia, you don't have to answer now. I'm not proposing exactly. I'm just telling you what I want, what I hope for." She took a breath. "You taught me that. How to say what I actually feel instead of what I think I should feel." Ryan was quiet for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Then he laughed, a surprised, joyful sound that made Grace stir in his arms. "You're proposing to me at my own building dedication." Our building dedication. In front of approximately 200 people. Most of them have left. In front of approximately 20 people, then. Details. He shook his head, still laughing. "You know, when I first met you, I thought you were the most controlled person I'd ever encountered. Every word calculated, every emotion suppressed, every move strategic." "I was. And now you're proposing marriage in public, at a work event, with our baby between us." "I've evolved." "You've become human." "Same thing." Ryan shifted Grace to one arm and reached into his pocket. "I was going to do this tonight, at dinner. I had a whole plan. Lily helped me pick out the ring. Hannah approved it. I even wrote a speech." Olivia's heart stopped. He pulled out a small velvet box and opened it, revealing a ring that caught the afternoon light. Simple, elegant, a single diamond surrounded by smaller stones that sparkled like stars. "But since you've already stolen my thunder," he said, "I guess I'll just say yes." "Yes? Yes, I'll marry you. Yes, I'll spend the rest of my life building things with you. Yes to every chaotic, terrifying, beautiful moment we haven't had yet." He slipped the ring onto her finger. "Is that enough yeses?" "It's a start." She kissed him then, really kissed him, not caring who might be watching. Grace made a small sound of protest between them, and they broke apart laughing. "I think our daughter disapproves," Ryan said. "She'll get used to it." "Dad?" Lily's voice rang across the plaza. She was running toward them, Hannah close behind. "Did you do it? Did you ask her?" "She actually asked me first." "What?" Lily skidded to a stop, her face outraged. "That's not how we planned it. I helped pick out the ring." "I know, baby. She jumped the gun." "Olivia," Lily turned her ire on her future stepmother. "You were supposed to be surprised." "I was surprised," Olivia assured her. Completely surprised. Your father caught me totally off guard. But you asked him first. I couldn't help it. I got impatient. Lily considered this for a moment, then nodded with the gravity of a judge, delivering a verdict. Okay, I accept your apology. I didn't apologize. You should. You're right. I'm sorry for ruining the surprise. Apology accepted. Lily threw her arms around both of them, somehow including Grace in the group hug. We're going to be a real family now, with a wedding and everything. We were already a real family, Ryan said. Yeah, but now we'll have pictures in nice clothes. That's different. Hannah arrived, slightly out of breath, her phone already raised for photos. Did I miss it? Please tell me I didn't miss it. You missed it, Ryan said. But you can take pictures now, Olivia added. We'll recreate the moment. That's not the same. It's close enough. They posed together, the four of them plus baby Grace, with the Meridian building rising behind them and the Seattle skyline stretching into the distance. Hannah took approximately 500 photos from every possible angle while Lily directed the proceedings with the authority of a seasoned photographer. And through it all, Olivia held Ryan's hand and felt the weight of the ring on her finger and marveled at how completely her life had changed. A year ago, she had been the ice queen of Seattle, feared, respected, utterly alone. She had built an empire and had nothing to share it with. She had achieved everything she'd set out to achieve and had no one to celebrate with. Now she had everything she'd never known she wanted. The wedding was held on a Saturday in September when the Seattle weather was being unusually cooperative. They kept it small, family and close friends only, in a ceremony at the Botanical Gardens that Lily had helped plan down to the last detail. The guest list included Diana and a few colleagues from Summit, Hannah and her husband from Portland, the Hendersons, and the Woos from the board, and a handful of Ryan's friends from his Boston days who had flown out for the occasion. Grace, now 8 months old, served as flower girl, carried down the aisle by her besotted older sister. She wore a white dress with tiny pink flowers and slept through the entire ceremony, blissfully unaware of the significance of the occasion. Olivia wore a simple ivory gown that flowed around her like water. No train, no veil, no elaborate accessories. Just her mother's pearls and a bouquet of wildflowers that Lily had insisted on. You look beautiful, Ryan said when she reached him at the altar. You look terrified. I am terrified. I'm marrying the most intimidating woman in Seattle. Oh, former most intimidating. I've softened. You're still pretty intimidating. Good. The officiant, a friend of Hannah's who had gotten ordained online for the occasion, guided them through their vows. They had written their own, as Lily had insisted, though she had also insisted on approving them beforehand to make sure they were romantic enough. Ryan went first. Olivia, he said, his voice steady despite the emotion in his eyes, a year and a half ago, I was a man running from grief, trying to build a life for my daughter while convinced I would never feel whole again. Then I met you, and everything I thought I knew about strength and vulnerability and love turned out to be wrong. He took her hands in his grip warm and sure. You taught me that being strong doesn't mean being alone, that letting someone in isn't weakness, it's courage, that the scars we carry don't have to define us unless we let them. He paused, his voice cracking slightly. I fell in love with you in pieces. First your mind, then your heart, then the woman who hid behind the armor. And now I can't imagine my life without any part of you. Olivia felt tears tracking down her cheeks, but didn't bother wiping them away. I promised to stand beside you in every battle and every celebration. I promised to be your partner in building things, buildings, businesses, family. I promised to love you through every version of yourself you become, because I know now that change isn't something to fear. It's something to embrace. He lifted her hand and pressed a kiss to her knuckles. I love you, Olivia Hart. Thank you for letting me in. The guests were silent. Several of them were crying. Lily was beaming with the satisfaction of someone whose romantic standards had been met. Then it was Olivia's turn. Ryan, she began, her voice stronger than she expected. I spent 41 years building walls. I convinced myself that safety lay in solitude, that love was a vulnerability I couldn't afford, that the only person I could truly rely on was myself. She looked at him. This man who had shattered every assumption she'd ever made about her own heart. Then you brought me ginger tea when I was sick and stayed when I pushed you away and loved me even when I didn't know how to love myself. You showed me that a family isn't something you're born into, it's something you choose, something you build piece by piece, with patience and courage and stubborn, stupid hope. A laugh rippled through the crowd. I fell in love with you because you saw me, not the CEO everyone feared, not the ice queen everyone whispered about. You saw the scared woman behind the armor, and instead of running, you stayed. You held my hand and told me I wasn't alone, and you kept telling me until I finally believed it. She squeezed his hands, drawing strength from the contact. I promise to keep choosing you every day, even when it's hard. I promise to let you see me, really see me, even when I want to hide. I promise to build a life with you that's bigger and messier and more beautiful than anything I could have built alone. She took a breath. I love you, Ryan Cole. Thank you for teaching me how. The officiant pronounced them married, and when Ryan kissed her, the cheers of their small gathering echoed through the garden like joy made audible. The reception was held in a tent beside the garden, strung with lights that glowed softly in the gathering dusk. There was dinner and dancing and toasts that ranged from heartfelt to hilarious. Charles Henderson told stories about Olivia's early days at Summit that made her blush. Hannah revealed embarrassing details about Ryan's teenage years that had Lily howling with laughter. Diana gave a toast that surprised everyone. When I started working for Olivia Hart, she said, raising her glass, I was warned that she ate assistants for breakfast, that she was impossible to please, that working for her would be the hardest job of my life. The crowd laughed nervously. All of that was true. But what nobody told me was that she would also be the most inspiring person I'd ever worked for. That she would push me to be better, work harder, reach higher. That beneath the intimidating exterior was someone who cared deeply about the people around her, even if she didn't always know how to show it. Diana looked directly at Olivia. This past year, I've watched you become the person you were always meant to be. Not softer, never softer, but fuller, more complete, more human. She smiled. Ryan, take care of her. She's special. And Olivia, keep letting him take care of you. You deserve it. Olivia wiped her eyes for what felt like the 100th time that day. I hate crying, she muttered to Ryan. I know, but you're beautiful when you cry. That's a weird thing to say. I'm a weird guy. You knew that when you proposed to me. She laughed and leaned into him, feeling the solid warmth of his body beside hers. Lily gave the final toast of the evening, standing on her chair so everyone could see her. My mom died when I was 5, she said, her voice clear and steady. For a long time, I was really sad. I thought I would never have a complete family again. But then Olivia came, and Grace was born, and now I have 2 sisters and a mom who's scary enough to protect us from anything. The crowd laughed through their tears. Olivia, thank you for loving my dad and for not being weirded out by my dinosaur collection and for helping me with math even though you work like 1,000,000 hours a day. Lily raised her juice glass. And Dad, thank you for being brave enough to fall in love again. Mom would be happy. I know because I am too. Ryan pulled his daughter into his arms, hugging her fiercely. Olivia joined them, Grace wedged between them, and for a moment the 4 of them existed in their own private bubble while the reception swirled around them. I love you, Lily said, her voice muffled against Ryan's chest. All of you. Even Grace, even though she can't talk yet. We love you too, Olivia said. More than you'll ever know. When they finally released each other, the DJ was playing something slow and sweet, and Ryan extended his hand. Dance with me, Mrs. Cole. I kept my name. Dance with me, Ms. Hart Cole. That's not what we decided either. Dance with me, woman I married today, whose name I'm apparently still unclear on. She laughed and took his hand, letting him lead her onto the small dance floor. They swayed together, her head against his shoulder, his arms around her waist, the lights glowing softly above them. Happy? He asked. Terrified. Still? Always. But it's the good kind of terrified now, the kind that comes with hope. I'll take it. They danced through 3 more songs, until Grace woke up demanding attention, and Lily insisted it was time to cut the cake. The evening dissolved into sugar and laughter, and the comfortable chaos of a celebration reaching its natural end. And when they finally left the reception, driving toward the new house they had bought together in a quiet neighborhood with good schools and a backyard big enough for a swing set, Olivia looked out the window at the city lights passing by and felt something she had spent her entire life chasing without knowing it: peace, belonging, home. Not because she had finally achieved enough, or accumulated enough, or proved herself enough, but because she had finally let herself be loved. 1 year later, Olivia stood at the window of her corner office, watching the Seattle rain streak across the glass. It was a pose she had struck 1,000 times before, but everything about it was different now. The photo on her desk had grown. There were multiple frames now: the wedding picture, Grace's first birthday, Lily's fourth-grade graduation, a candid shot Hannah had taken of all of them at the beach, laughing at something Ryan had said. The city beyond the window was the same city it had always been, but Olivia's relationship to it had changed. She was still the CEO of Summit Architecture. She still commanded boardrooms and closed deals and drove her employees to excellence. But she was no longer the ice queen. She was something more complicated, more nuanced, more human. She was a wife, a mother, a stepmother. A woman who had finally learned that strength and vulnerability weren't opposites. They were partners. Her phone buzzed with a text from Ryan. Ryan. Lily's school called. Grace got sent to the principal's office for biting another kid. Olivia. Grace is 1 year old. Ryan. Apparently she bit Lily's principal during a Bring Your Sibling event. Olivia. That's my girl. Ryan. You're supposed to be upset. Olivia. I am upset. I'm upset that I missed it. She smiled, pocketing her phone, and turned from the window just as Diana appeared in the doorway. The mentorship program graduates are here for the reception. How many this year? 23, including 2 who've already received job offers from major firms. Olivia felt a surge of pride. The program she had founded after Grace's birth had grown beyond anything she'd imagined. Young women from all backgrounds learning that architecture was a career path open to them, that they didn't have to choose between ambition and family, that the glass ceiling was cracked and crumbling. Send them in. The young women filed in, nervous and excited, their eyes wide as they took in the corner office of the legendary Olivia Hart. Olivia remembered being young like them, hungry like them, convinced that success required sacrificing everything soft and human. She smiled and watched some of the nervousness fade. Welcome, she said. I'm glad you're here. Let me tell you about the most important thing I've learned in 20 years of building this company. They leaned in, expecting wisdom about deals or strategy or the cutthroat world of corporate architecture. The most important thing, Olivia continued, is that none of it matters if you don't have people to share it with. You can build the tallest building in the world, but if you have to stand in it alone, it's just an expensive monument to loneliness. She saw some of them exchange confused glances. I spent decades believing I had to choose between success and love, between career and family, between strength and vulnerability. I was wrong. The real strength is learning to hold all of it: the ambition and the tenderness, the drive and the doubt, the armor and the openness. She looked around the room at these young faces, so full of potential. Build things, she said. Build companies and buildings and careers, but don't forget to build relationships. Don't forget to let people in. Don't forget that the walls we construct to protect ourselves can also become the prisons that trap us. She smiled. And if you ever find someone who makes you want to tear down your walls, someone who sees you clearly and loves you anyway, don't let fear make you push them away. Let them in. Let them change you. Let them make you more than you could ever be alone. The young women were silent for a moment. Then one of them, a girl with dark hair and bright eyes who reminded Olivia uncomfortably of herself at that age, raised her hand. Ms. Hart? What if we're scared? Olivia laughed. You should be scared. Love is terrifying. Family is terrifying. Vulnerability is the most terrifying thing in the world. She paused. But it's also the most rewarding. And I promise you, when you look back at your life decades from now, you won't remember the deals you closed or the awards you won. You'll remember the people you loved and the moments you shared and the life you built together. She thought of Ryan, waiting for her at home with Grace on his hip and dinner burning on the stove. She thought of Lily, probably working on some new project involving dinosaurs and an alarming amount of glitter. She thought of all the moments she had almost missed because she was too afraid to reach for them. Any other questions? Hands went up around the room, and Olivia spent the next hour answering them, about architecture and leadership and the practical challenges of being a woman in a male-dominated field. But she also talked about balance and boundaries and the importance of protecting the things that mattered most. When the reception ended and the graduates filed out, Diana lingered in the doorway. "That was different," she said. "Different how?" "Different from the Olivia Hart who hired me 7 years ago. She would never have talked about love in a professional setting. She was an idiot. She was scared." Same thing. Olivia gathered her things, already looking forward to getting home. "Any messages?" "Just one, from Gerald Hendricks. He wants to know if you're available for lunch next week to discuss a new project." "What kind of project?" "A sustainable housing development. Low-income families. Something about giving back to the community." Olivia smiled. The Meridian Project had changed Hendricks. Or maybe it had just revealed the person he'd always been beneath the corporate exterior. "Tell him yes. And Diana?" "Yes?" "Thank you. For 7 years of putting up with me. For sticking around while I figured out how to be human." Diana's professional mask cracked into a genuine smile. It was worth the wait. She left, and Olivia was alone in her office for the last time that day. She looked around at the space she had occupied for years, the corner window, the expensive furniture, the view of Seattle spreading toward the water. It was still impressive, still a symbol of everything she had achieved. But it was no longer the center of her universe. She picked up her phone and called Ryan. "Hey," he answered, sounding harried. "Grace just discovered she can throw spaghetti. It's everywhere. I mean everywhere. The ceiling, the dog, Lily's science project." "We have a dog?" "Lily wore me down. His name is Newton." "Of course it is." "Are you coming home?" She looked out the window at the city she had conquered, then at the photos on her desk of the family she had built. "I'm on my way." The drive home took 45 minutes in traffic. Olivia used the time to decompress, to shift from CEO mode to family mode, to leave behind the woman who commanded boardrooms and become the woman who was loved. When she pulled into the driveway of their house, the one with the blue door and the swing set in the backyard and the new dog apparently named Newton, she could already hear the chaos inside. She opened the front door to a scene of beautiful disaster. Ryan was in the kitchen, covered in spaghetti sauce, trying to wrestle a bowl away from Grace, who was shrieking with delight. Lily was on the floor with a golden retriever puppy, who was enthusiastically licking her face. The TV was playing something animated at full volume. A science project involving papier-mâché and far too much glitter was spread across the dining room table. It was loud and messy, and absolutely nothing like the controlled environment Olivia had cultivated for 40 years. It was perfect. "You're home!" Lily launched herself at Olivia, dragging Newton behind her. "Look, we got a dog. His name is Newton because he discovered gravity when he fell off the couch." "That's not how gravity was discovered. It's how Newton the dog discovered it." "Fair point." Olivia knelt down to pet the puppy, who immediately tried to climb into her lap. "He's very enthusiastic." "He's perfect," Lily said firmly. "Just like our family." Ryan appeared from the kitchen, holding a sauce-covered Grace at arm's length. "I can explain." "No need. I married into this chaos willingly." "You proposed to this chaos willingly." "Same thing." She took Grace from him, not caring about the sauce that immediately transferred to her expensive suit. The baby gurgled happily and grabbed a fistful of Olivia's hair. "Gentle, Gracie. We've talked about this." Grace responded by grabbing another fistful with her other hand. "She's asserting dominance," Lily observed. "Wonder where she gets that from," Ryan muttered. Olivia shot him a look, but she was smiling. "Is dinner salvageable?" "I ordered pizza." "Of course you did." "It's tradition now. Can't fight tradition." They settled into the evening routine. Bath time for Grace, homework help for Lily, pizza consumed while watching whatever movie Lily had chosen, Newton weaving between their legs hoping for dropped food. Later, after the children were in bed and the house had finally gone quiet, Olivia and Ryan sat on the back porch watching the stars appear above their backyard. You know what I was thinking about today? She said. The meaning of life? The future of sustainable architecture? Whether Newton was a good idea? Newton was a terrible idea. That's not what you said when he fell asleep in your lap. He was warm. I was using him for temperature regulation. Sure you were. She leaned against his shoulder, feeling the familiar comfort of his presence. I was thinking about that first night, at the Four Seasons, when everything started. The night you seduced me with your vulnerability? I did not seduce you. You absolutely seduced me. I was a helpless victim of your emotional availability. That makes no sense. It made sense in my head. She smiled, closing her eyes. I was so scared, not just of getting caught or of the consequences. I was scared of wanting something I couldn't control, of feeling something that didn't fit into my carefully organized life. And now? Now I'm still scared sometimes, but it's different. Now I'm scared of losing what I have, not of having it. She opened her eyes, looking up at the stars. I never thought I'd have this. A family, a home, someone who sees all my sharp edges and loves me anyway. Your sharp edges are my favorite thing about you. They're what cut me off from everyone for 40 years, and they're what protect the people you love now. He kissed the top of her head. You're not a different person, Olivia. You're the same person you always were, brilliant and fierce and absolutely terrifying when necessary. You've just learned to let a few people inside the fortress. A very select few. We're an exclusive club. The most exclusive. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, listening to the sounds of the night, distant traffic, a neighbor's wind chimes, Newton snoring somewhere inside the house. I love you, Olivia said finally. I don't say it enough. I think it all the time, but the words get stuck somewhere between my heart and my mouth. You say it in other ways. When you help Lily with her homework even though you've worked 12 hours. When you wake up at 3 a.m. to feed Grace so I can sleep. When you let me cover the ceiling in spaghetti sauce without filing for divorce. I considered it. The divorce, I mean. I know. I saw you calculating the legal fees in your head. She laughed, surprising herself. I'm glad I didn't go through with it. Me too. He pulled her closer. I love you, Olivia Hart. I loved you when you were terrifying. I loved you when you were vulnerable. I love you now when you're somehow both at the same time. And I'll love you through whatever comes next, the good and the bad, and the messy and the beautiful. That's a lot of loving. I've got time. They stayed on the porch until the stars wheeled overhead and the night grew cold, talking about everything and nothing, making plans and discarding them, simply existing together in the space they had built. When they finally went inside, Olivia paused at the door, looking back at the yard, the swing set, the house that had become a home. She thought about the woman she had been a year and a half ago, standing at her office window, watching the rain, believing she was invincible because she needed nothing from anyone. She thought about this pregnancy test that had shattered that illusion, the choices that had followed, the love she had almost been too scared to accept. She thought about Ryan and Lily and Grace and Newton, about Diana and Hannah and the mentorship program graduates, about the building she had created and the family she had built and the life that had turned out nothing like she'd planned. Better. So much better. She closed the door on the night and walked toward the bedroom where her husband was waiting, where her children were sleeping, where the future was unfolding one precious moment at a time. The Ice Queen of Seattle had finally found her warmth, and it was everything she never knew she needed. Success. The end.